Hello everyone, we hope you're all doing very well. It's time for our next interview and a very special one. Today we have Tim Davies of FastJet Performance. Hello Tim.
Oh, how you doing? Yeah, good to be here.
So you were a Tornado pilot in the RAF and you're retired now and you run FastJet Performance. Can you give us kind of a 30-second idea of what FastJet Performance is, please?
30 seconds, right, clock runs. FastJet Performance then is a business in itself. So I go into companies and I consult on high performance, everything else. That's one of my aspects. I'm also strategy director for a company called Airlist at the moment. FastJet Performance, what I do is I put out engaging content that kind of based around aviation that I did when I was on Tornadoes, obviously Hawk T1, Hawk T2 as well. And that really is to guide not only young people, but also people really in their mid-30s all the way up to 60. Because I do a lot of coaching work, you see, especially with men. I do individual coaching, men and women, but I do group coaching up to 6 guys with the spin recovery program I run for basically men going through that kind of transitional phase we go through. So that's pretty much what FastJet Performance is.
Roger. And you've started in DCS now, I believe.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, basically that was just, I think I live streamed an X-Plane video initially of just the Hawk getting airborne out of Valley. And I was talking about, I like talking about airmanship and captaincy. The technical side, the Hawk was quite good for that on X-Plane, really, because there isn't much else you can do in a T1. You know, this is pretty basic. Made in 1974. But yeah, I moved across to DCS because it was like that Eurovision song. You know, I put out an X-Plane, and then in the comments, everyone's like, yeah, ding dong. You know, it's like, it was just DCS. And I'm like, oh, give me a rest, guys. So I moved across to DCS to yeah, ding dong. And now I'm doing that kind of thing, learning aircraft on DCS, trying not to get too technical into it, but really trying to hit the airmanship side and the captaincy side.
Great.
I think that's missing, that's all. So.
No, you know what, I'm just thinking about as I'm going, that's exactly right. I can sit here and tell people how to press the button to fire the weapon in various planes, but I am not and will never be a real pilot and will never have that competency that you have. And I think that's great that you can bring that. Whereas 99% of us otherwise are not pilots. We're gamers at the end of the day. So I think it's great that you're filling that gap.
Well, hopefully I can. I mean, to me, it's the more interesting side of flying. Basically, we can all learn routines, subroutines, press buttons, but we'll fly into the desert floor unless we know how to, compartmentalize what we're doing and prioritize our actions. And that's what I see when I fly with other people sometimes on servers. It's frustrating for me because I can tell when there's another pilot in the formation, even if they're not that competent with the weapon systems. I can tell by their language, like they'll give me a rollout heading for a start. So a rollout heading is literally in a formation we fly in like a battle 4 or pair. If they're rolling out on non-standard heading towards a waypoint, they'll say something like steady 180 or something. And that's all I need to keep myself in battle with them, you know. And they'll fly a constant speed. And what I tend to find is that there's a lot of, and you're going to hate me for saying this, but there's a lot of basics that haven't been sort of gripped, I think, by the communities at the moment I'm seeing. And it doesn't take too much to jump on that and just to kind of hopefully solve that. Very few things required. But I tell you what, the technical knowledge of some of these pilots is far outside what I'm
Roger, and
will ever be.
Tactical as well in terms of air-to-airmanship. Some of these guys, I mean, not me, but some of these guys are so good at defeating missiles and tactics and group tactics and stuff like that.
Yeah,
they just put a lot of time into it. But you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, when someone downloads DCS, the first thing they want to do is fire an AIM-54 at 70 miles and blow a bomber up. They don't want to sit and learn the basic shit. And then so you almost work backwards. Is what I found. I personally have learned to fire all the fancy weapons and drop the bombs, and then I'm slowly going backwards and actually learning what these instruments do. I've only just started using my slip gauge, and I've been doing this for 5 years. It's just how it is, But yeah,
it's fair. It's a very fair point. And why not? I was chatting to DCS. I chat to him quite a lot now. And if that's the way you get people into aviation and inspired by that, then that's the right way of doing it. And I must admit, I would never try and change that at all. Yeah. What I try and do, though, is say, right, we can all throw missiles down range, but you can't land for shit. Come on. What are you doing? Why are you bringing this stuff back?
You've been watching Grim Reapers. Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking especially about them. No, I wasn't at all. But I'm just saying, look, there is a discipline around the circuit. There's a discipline around the instrument pattern. I know we don't have many approach aids on DCS. I think that is that's something that Simon is going to look at. So that's pretty cool. I think they're going to start bringing in some better weather dynamics as well to make it a bit more realistic. And I just think that's probably the side that I enjoyed with X-Plane. that maybe we don't yet have in DCS. But I reckon, to be honest, with DCS, they're at the bottom of a hockey stick type thing, and they're going to go pretty much rocket ship soon. I don't see how they're not going to be the most dominant flight sim in the market. I hate to say that because Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 is coming out soon. I think it's going to be beautiful, but DCS has such a great sort of fan base behind it, a community that are really doing such great things that for MS Flight Sim 2020 to do that, is going to take a while, if at all.
Yeah, I've had this conversation before, and I agree. And in terms of, I see DCS as an exponential curve going upwards and I know that because I can't keep up with it anymore. I try and keep up with, I used to be cover everything that's coming out, and I used to cover it easily. Now I'm constantly chasing my tail. I just can't keep up with it, which is good. It's frustrating, but it's good. Okay, now before we go on with the official questions, just to let you know, before I forget to say, we Grim Reapers are always open for business, always looking to work with interesting people like yourself with experience. So just saying that, never feel worried about coming to us with anything. Grim Reapers, I've got this idea, go and test it. Okay, we'll do it. That's sure. The thing. Now we're actually here for the value viewers. That's why we're making a video, and that means we open the floor up to them. They ask questions. We don't censor them. They can be anything. You can get some weird ones. So we're going to run through the questions. We'll do it in a fast, efficient manner because Tim is a very busy man, as you can probably understand, and so we're just going to blast through it almost like a kind of RAF interview. That's just how it is. Not too much chit chat today, I guess. So, questions. Hopefully no sweary ones. Number one. Why? Oh, by the way, we've got the synopsis here. I'm not going to read it out today because it is a long one. It's really full and accurate. So if you want to read that, please go and read it. Why did you not go down the route of commercial flying when you left the RAF? That's interesting. That's the natural thing, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was a jet guy, wasn't I? So we don't come out with any ATPL like my kid brother. My kid brother was on Hercules for the Royal Air Force for about 12 years and then the Royal Canadian Air Force as well. And he managed to build his ATPL when he was in. So for him, the airlines and VIP flying on BizJets was a natural fit. And he flies out with Emirates now out in the out in the Middle East. He's had a great time. Don't get me wrong. For me though, if I come out of the Air Force, and there's other reasons, but if I had come out of the Air Force and gone into the airlines with my background, I'd have been the first person out. So I'd be the last in, first out. So I'm kind of lucky it didn't actually happen. A lot of redundancies have happened. A lot of my friends now don't have a job. In fact, another guy called Tim, I did my last flight with him. In fact, he went to BA. I went to business. He went to BA, and he was just made redundant. So, I'm kind of fortunate.
COVID, are we talking about, or general?
Yeah, well, yes, it is. I mean, that's exactly why the redundancies are happening, isn't it, in the market? Now, you may find it picks up again, but he's decided not to stay with airlines now. He's going to try and go business. A lot of my guys, number one for jet guys really is the Middle East, Saudi, working in Saudi on the Hawk. And I don't want to go to Saudi, to be honest. It's nothing against the country or, anything like that. I live in the countryside here, and for 20 years of my life, I couldn't choose where I lived. I had to go where the Air Force or the Navy told me to go. And for the first time ever, I decided to give something back to my wife. And I said, you just go and live wherever you want in the country. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I'll work it out. And she chose to live near Cheltenham, which is in the countryside. It's amazing. I'm looking at trees and all sorts of stuff, which is cool. So for me, it's nothing really to do the airlines. I say to young people, like, if you want to go to the airlines, understand what the airlines is and embrace that. You're an operator, okay? And you're flying some great machinery. You're not throwing jets around. The money you make, go and fly at the weekends on gliders or go and fly light aircraft, but understand the responsibilities you have and the professionalism that you will have as an airline pilot. Still think it's a great career. It's just not one for me after 20 years of flying jets around. That's all. Yeah,
it's not quite the same as a tornado at 150 feet across the back of my house where I used to live. I really good. I lived in I'm going to start chatting. I lived in a beautiful corridor 20 years ago, Milton Hall, Lakenheath, Alconbury. Plus, it just so happened we had in the line of low flying as well of F-111s, tornadoes, who were always the lowest. I was always proud of the RAF, really built in across the back. And I swear, I lived in maybe 10 houses since then, and I've never had anything like that before, where you're in this crisscross area. Oh, amazing. Anyway, there we go. I've said the story before. So, next question. If you had to join the RAF today, would you? So what's the equivalent of the tornado today?
If you had to join today, would you? Would I join the Air Force today? Well, I still recommend to young people. I get about 10 to 20 emails a day, and very often the email, my nemesis email is from a 16-year-old kid who's decided overnight that he wants to join the Royal Air Force. It normally is a him. And he hasn't done any air cadets or anything like that. Or it might be an 18-year-old that's picked the wrong A-levels and they're deep in social sciences or humanities, which is fine, but it just limits their choice on a technical aspect if they were to go to university. But the email would say, how do I become a pilot in the Royal Air Force? And can you tell me something that will get me the job and no one else? And it's like, well, I've answered that 1,000 times. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So there is, I mean, the Air Force is quite good because even if you think you're God's gift to aviation, having never sat on an airplane before, you'll be weeded out before you get too far. What I say to people is, if you're just looking at the Air Force, then that's not really what the Air Force wants from someone. They want someone who's going to be an officer first, pilot second. The Royal Navy most certainly do, which is why I joined the Navy, because I wanted to be an officer first, pilot second. This service, the Royal Air Force tends to have people apply who want to be a pilot first, and if they don't get to be pilot, they won't even stay and do another job, and I never liked that. So I really get those young people to start thinking about what it means. Would I join today? There's a lot less flying today than there was. The communities are very different. I'm not having a go, by the way, because the F-35, I've got men on that and women on that, and that seems to be fantastic, as does the Typhoon, although busy. Typhoon guys are busy. I still speak to the communities, obviously. I would join the Air Force and maybe go into multi-engine or look to go into rotary, possibly multi-engine, actually. I think that's quite exciting at the moment. Or even join the Air Force and go and fly Reaper.
Roger.
Because that's where it's going. The work I do with Aerialist right now is autonomous. I don't think we can use the word unmanned anymore. I think the Air Force have banned that word. It's called uncrewed. Yeah, it's a bit too woke, wasn't it? Or a bit too unwoke. So I would look at that. I'd think about what the service is, do a deep dive in it, and say, if I don't get what I want out of the service, can I still contribute in some massive valued way? So I would still say go. I would still say have a look at it. I've got a bit of an issue with the service where they've swung far too far on diversity and inclusion at the moment. But that's natural because they're operating 20 years behind everyone else. That's natural. It will come back to the center by the time anyone hits it and joins now. So I wouldn't change it. I would just do it less. I would go in for 12 years, not 20. That makes more sense to me.
Excellent answer. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I hope that answers it. I do believe in getting in there, getting a lot of contribution, adding a lot of value to the service in any way you can, doing your time and getting out again. I think these careers of 20 years, especially when the training is a bit broken right now, it's going to take you 7 years to get on a fast jet. To me, that's not right. I wouldn't ever advise anyone to go down that route. People are holding for years. Their lives are being held for a year and a bit post Cranwell, for example. That's not that. You don't keep intelligent people holding like that and expect them to stay out of trouble. You know what I mean? They're going to get themselves in trouble.
They'll find something to do, and
they'll find something to get them. Yeah, and we've seen that at Shawbury recently and stuff like this. So get in, get your training done, do a couple of tours, maybe an instructional tour, and then get out after 12 years. But yeah, I would still advise people. I hope I've given a bit of context.
Yeah, that's brilliant. One day, if we ever get you in a flight one day, which I'll hammer it away until I finally get my way, I'd love it if you can spot out of all the guys we've got, say maybe 50, 60 flyers, we've got 2 guys that are going into the RAF to be pilots, and for me, they're really easy to spot who they are because they sound just like you. They've got they've got your attitude. Most of us are just gamers, we want to play the game, like me. I'm not here to be a serious pilot, but they've got a couple of the guys, and I'd love it if you could. I bet you could spot them in about 5 minutes by their attitude and how they speak, the terminology, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and they're really
it's great that they're going in. It's great that they've done that work. I mean, it's hard work to go. And I say this to people, if you want to go in, it's hard work. It's hard work to get in. It's hard work when you're in, and that doesn't seem to be something that a lot of people are interested in doing at the moment.
No, I mean, I'm not you, but I pride myself on being able to spot people's talents a little bit at least. And these guys are doing, physics majors, and the best. They're really committed, should I say? Anyway, let's push on.
Cool. Right, yeah. What are we doing? Right.
Did you enjoy your time at the RAF? So you're gonna have to kind of quantify that somehow.
Crikey! So here we go. Come straight out with that one, number 3. Yeah. Look, I started writing in 2011, which was about 12 years into my career, about leadership and about the problems in the service, really. It's all on my website. It's all on Fast Jet Performance. I've just had a young guy redo my website, Fluff Digital, bit of a shout out for them. Here's a young guy, and he's really trying hard with his business, and that's great. So all the essays are on there. Now, the reason I wrote about it is because at the time, I just got back from Afghanistan, and I never had the operational deployment leave. You should. I think it's about a month before I sent into a service inquiry into a fatality of a friend of mine in the Red Arrows. The leadership that sort of did that I felt was poor. And it wasn't just that. There were several levels above it that were acquiescing to the United Kingdom military flying training system in a way that they should have been challenging it. And what we ended up was a very difficult next 6 to 7 years for all the pilots in UKM FTS, all the instructors, because it hadn't been firmly gripped when it should have been by people who should have known better, i.e. people in command. They looked after their careers and didn't look after their men and women. And that's how I felt about it. So I wrote about it. So I would say the last 7 years of my life in the Royal Air Force, so the last 7 years were very difficult. And you don't come out of it unscathed as well. I fought a lot, and my men did as well. We fought very hard to try and, basically keep people alive on the squadron at a time when my men were telling me that there was a fatality. In fact, we shut the squadron down in 2014 or 2013 for about 6 months because I was head of all instructor training. And that allowed me to train my instructors, because my instructors weren't getting trained because they had to go and teach the students because the students had started too early, and it was all a mess. Course 1 on 4 squadrons. So I didn't enjoy those last 7 years, but I stayed with it because you don't leave something during tough times. It's important that when it gets uncomfortable, you start doing the work, and I did. The first 5 in the Navy I enjoyed a lot, and then the Tornado tour and the tour on 208 squadron that came after it were great. 4 squadron, the last tour, was a difficult tour, and I think you leave that, and that's meant I've been doing work for the last 2 years to undo some of the, I suppose what happens here is there's a bit of anger that happens, and I'm not proud to say it, but I see a therapist now. I do a lot of coaching with men on anger as well, and difficulties. This is exactly what happens on the spin recovery program, and why I wrote that program, the spin recovery program for men who really are just needing to take back control of their lives. So that was me when I left the service. I did that work. I wrote it into a program. So did I enjoy it? I enjoyed half my time in the Air Force, put it that way.
It's okay. 1,000,001 follow-up questions, and I shan't ask them because we'll be here all day, and maybe I shouldn't anyway. But could you just give us a very quick overview of this, if you can or want to, of this spin recovery program?
Yeah, so if you go to spinrecovery.com or you go to Fast Jet Performance, there's a tab for spin recovery. It's a 10-week program. It says 12 weeks at the moment, but I have condensed it a little bit. We do meet up halfway through, and we meet up twice a week. The Friday catch-up slots are any spin member can just jump in there and just chat to everyone else, but there is a slot during the week where the whole team come together, and then I work through Buddhism and Japanese philosophy. We talk about what it means to be a man and how we have to be respectful of ourselves and have a purpose. We do hard work, we do physical exercise. It's all remote, it's all online. It's better than individual coaching sessions. It's more valuable, and it's cheaper than having a one-on-one power hour, which is what I always do, with individual coaching clients. I've got a couple of those now, exceptionally high performers, actually. They're doing very well. So if you are thinking of coaching, like with a guy like myself, I coach in a very different way. I'm not going to necessarily ask you about your past, but I'm going to help you determine your future. And we're going to do that work together, and we're going to move forwards. And the Spin Recovery is a great program to do that on. So spinrecovery.com. Spin stands for self-esteem, purpose, identity, and negativity. And it's how I was when I left the service, and I'm in a lot better place now because I did some work.
Awesome. I wish I'd found this I don't know if I could afford it, but I wish I'd found it a few years ago. I'm just looking at it now on the website.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That's so cool.
It is good. I'm not being funny. I mean, one of the guys, I don't want to say this. One of the guys said it saved his life. Another guy, he said it saved his marriage. No two ways about it. Another guy was unemployed long term, got one of the dream jobs, in engineering he was looking for. So it makes, when men get together with men.
Oh God.
And we don't do it anymore, do we, Cap?
No.
Because we don't go to the pub, we don't,
That's exactly right. It's hard to be a man nowadays. It really is. What is a man anymore?
I'll tell you what, it's easy to be a boy. There's a lot of boys out there, but there's not men. And what I say is, look, men are not born, they're made by other men. And that's important, because I speak to a lot of, I say, boys out there, and I reject a lot of people for the course because I'm saying, look, this is going to be hard work, and I can tell you don't want to do it. So if you want to come on board, because if you're working as a team of 6 and they limit it to a team of 6, it's, you're going to do that work because you've got another 5 guys saying, hey, if you're going to get up in the morning and go for a run, I'm going to get up and go for the morning, go for a run with you in the morning, and I'm going to text you or phone you up and make sure you got your training shoes on. And that's what men should be doing, is lifting up other men. And all we're doing right now is being slapped around by men who should know better.
You won't believe what I have to go through every day. But,
Sure. So I'm full on with it. So, I'm not apologetic at all.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. I'd love literally nothing more to sit and talk to you about this.
We can get on a call sometime,
But for now, we'll leave that there. But that's obvious and gives me an insight into your self as well, and how strong you are and whatnot. But Okay, anyway, let's carry on for the valued viewers who do this. So, how many flight hours do you have if we don't have that somewhere?
No, I don't know. I never counted. A lot of guys don't count. We have logbooks, of course. I think I left with about 2,600, around about that. It's not the same. It's kind of funny when you talk flight hours. Every single one of those hours, my brother, he'd be saying, I've got 10,000 because he's an airline guy, of course. It's not the hour you count. It's the value that you've gained in that hour. So every single one of those hours is different. And for, say, a Maltese guy who might have 4 times those hours, they've actually probably got the same number of valuable hours where they've actually learned something or contributed. So about 2,600, pretty standard to leave after about 20 years. The Americans would have twice that, of course, because they do a bit more flying than us. But it was enough. Crikey, I don't want to sit in a jet more than that. It's there's a world out there to go and explore. And I got to the point, where sitting in an airplane was, for me, something I'd done too much of. So,
Roger. Okay. Only guy I know that can get bored of flying a jet.
No, there's a lot of guys. That's why you leave. I mean, honestly, you leave before you get bitter. Put it that way. Yeah. And I did. I was lucky.
Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Hi, Tim. The Harrier is my favourite aircraft. Did you ever get to fly one? And how was it changing from the Royal Navy to the RAF? What are the main differences in how they train and operate? Thanks, Stu.
Yeah, all right, Stu. Well, that's a great question, mate. Yeah, no worries. So the Harrier, I had a GR9 guy the other day, in fact, send me his flight manuals and his FRCs and everything like that. So at some point I have to jump into the Harrier, and I think the Harrier is as close to the Hawk T2 as we're going to find. It used very similar head-up display and everything, and made by the same people, whatevs. So the Harrier, I flew in an FRS2. So, I flew in I think it was a T8. I can't remember what the Navy had, but anyway, the twin seat Sea Harrier. But I didn't train on it. I got to the end of Valley. I was about one trip to the end, and then there were a couple of guys in front of me that were waiting to go to the OCU down 899, and there were a couple of guys behind me, about 9 of us in total. The Harrier was disbanded a day before I finished the course on 19 Squadron. I was a naval officer, and so we were told by, there's about 9 naval officers, and the Navy said, look, you guys have got to retrain on helicopters, like start again, like from the beginning. And they said, unless you want to go across to the Air Force. None of us did, because we're fiercely proud to be in the Navy, but the current Chief of Air Staff, a guy called Mike Wigston, he was the appointer at the time in the Air Force, and he called us all up. He said, guys, you can come across to the service and I can pretty much give you a pick of whatever aircraft you want, because you've been fully trained, and the Air Force will pay for the remainder of trips. And some guys had like 10 trips left in training. I had 1, as I said. And we did. And ironically, the Tornado Squadron I stepped onto became Mike Wigston's first command. So I was under Mike Wigston for a few years, and then he became Chief of Air Staff, of course, in the Air Force. What's the difference? Was the question, what's the difference in training and the aircraft itself?
And how was it? Well, how was it changing from the Royal Navy to the RAF? And what are the differences in how they train and operate? Right.
Well, operate is probably the key one. They train the same, because all naval officers go through the Royal Air Force flying training. Well, it's the United Kingdom flying training system. The instructors in that are Royal Air Force instructor and naval instructors, and so you train together. The Army train at Shawbury. They all train together. I think the Army are now going to not do light aircraft flying. They're going to go straight rotary, which crikey, let's see how that works out for them. But the main difference isn't how they train. So there aren't any differences in how they train, but how they operate. Well, what happened is the remainder of the Harrier pilots on the Harrier force in the Navy went across to the Royal Air Force, not transferred. They kept their rank. They stayed as naval officers, and they flew Harrier with the Royal Air Force alongside them. So they operate exactly the same. What we tend to find, though, is the Navy are much happier to go to sea. The Royal Air Force didn't like deploying at sea. While some did, some didn't. It's difficult if you haven't joined for that, and then someone puts you on a boat. It's like, oh, crying out loud. But I quite enjoy that stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think it's the Harrier model in DCS is superb. I've flown it already.
Notch. Yeah, everyone. Yeah. I mean, I don't know obviously how it flies, but compared to the real one, but it's a really top-notch thing to fly, and it really gives you fulfillment. In fact, it's what I would think would be quite similar to being a Tornado in the way it kind of goes through the valleys and low flying through valleys and stuff. It reminds me of what it might have been like to fly a Tornado. I don't know, but
Well, when I first flew DCS, that was the first aircraft I downloaded and flew, and I got airborne out of some Caucasus mission. I don't know, I can't remember where it was. And as I lifted up, I was on VR. And I travelled gear, and I started, working through flap. And I looked to the left and right. It was exactly, for me, it just felt the same. And I remember thinking, I've got to land this thing. It was one of those awful feelings of like, I've actually got to land this thing. I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Just gashed it in like a hero, obviously.
Roger.
But yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No. Fine. Good to hear. Right, let's push on. Do you think there is a north-south divide in the UK in terms of pilot recruitment? My own experience suggests there is. I also suspect that the recruitment offices are used to people walking in saying that they want to be a pilot, and as a result they seem to actively discourage you or don't take you seriously. So how do you bypass these people and go straight to the aptitude tests? Can you quickly explain what he means by north-south divide pilot recruitment? It means nothing to me.
Yeah, no. He's just talking about, the north really is, where's the north star? He's talking Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, all that area, and then he's talking London, South, Essex, and Surrey, and all that lot. I think it's probably Birmingham North, isn't it? Is what we'd say would be the north, and then everything else is the south. I mean, we could do it by population densities, of course, and there is a divide, I think, really, especially economically and based on wealth in the UK. When you sent these questions, I saw that one, and the Air Force wouldn't say there was. There's no reason for there to be. One of my best buddies who I flew his last trip of, a guy called Steve, was from the north, and he had a very strong northern accent. He was a fantastic pilot, very, very good. One of my top instructors, in fact. He's out in the Middle East now. In fact, I think he's just come back, actually. Now, there was no problem with that guy. I think one of the problems is people go into recruitment offices expecting, I don't know what they expect, but they go in and say, I want to be a pilot. And that's the wrong attitude. It's like, yeah, everyone does that. Come on. So you can't bypass them.
You want to be who?
Sorry, go on.
The thing you want to hear as a recruiter is, how do I help the RAF? How do I be part of the team? Not, I want to do this, I want to do that.
I'm about to say that, Cap. I'm about to say, I'd go into a careers office now and say, look, I want to join the Royal Air Force because that's all I've been thinking about since I was a kid. And I'd probably have joined Air Cadets or been a cub or whatever it might be. I would have probably done some charity work. I answer a lot of these emails. I would probably, and I talk about this all the time, don't I, on YouTube and the podcast. And I would probably have committed into some I'd have just, maybe I'll be working, even if it's like I did, pushing shopping trolleys around Asda. I'm getting a job done. You know what I mean? I'm getting some self-fulfillment. That's how I started off. Was in a perfume factory, in fact, making Estee Lauder products. So I know Fuzzy Peach, White Musk, and Dewberry at about 10-mile range. I can detect those because I used to be covered in it, all the time. Didn't make chatting up girls very easy in the nightclubs, of course. But so I would say to these young people, you've got to be working. Not just in a physical sense, like I've got a job, but you've got, right, what's going to add to my application? Well, can I go out somewhere and work used to be kibbutzes in my time in Israel, didn't it? But now can I do some charity work overseas? Can I help build a road somewhere? Can I all these things. When you go to the careers office, then you say, look, I want to be an officer in Her Majesty's Royal Air Force. I've read everything about it. It's been my life for the last 7 years. I'm now at an age where I can apply. I have thought about going to university. It's still an option for me. And I would like to be a pilot, please. And I'm thinking that it doesn't matter what I fly, but I know what I prefer to fly, but I'll fly whatever the service wants me to fly, because I think I can add significant value to the Royal Air Force, because that's all I've been doing for the last 7 years. I mean, why would you not take that guy? Exactly. And the problem is, I get guys writing to me saying, I want to be a pilot in the Air Force. How do I do it? And I'm like, right, okay. So first off, I've been doing this for a few years now, so I get a little bit flashed. But first off, how about you Google it? You know, there's a lot out there. I mean, you know, if you can make the effort of writing to me, then I'm not going to solve your problems for you because you're lazy. All right. And that's why you're not going to be a pilot in the Royal Air Force, because those two things don't go together. Get on Google, type that in. How can I become a pilot in the Royal Air Force? There's something called the student rooms, OASC. You can go there. Anyone that's been to OASC goes in the student rooms and they write about their experience. For CBATs, some dude has done the CBATs. These are the aptitude tests, and he's written a whole website on CBATs. I don't know how to find it. Just type it in and search for it. I have got a link somewhere, but in an email. So it's about thinking to yourself, like, yeah, you know, I don't think there's a north-south divide. I just think there's a divide between people that are willing to do the work and people that want it handed on a plate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. Sorry, go ahead.
Why would there be a north-south divide? Why? There's no reason. The service recruits from all over the country, all over the world, in fact.
You want your talent. You want talent at the end of the day. It doesn't matter where they come from. That would be my philosophy if I was recruiting.
Yeah, you want a guy who has actually put the effort in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's come there and said, I know what this entails. I know it's hard. I'm willing to do the work. I've done a lot of work already by being,
Mm-hmm.
I know, a sergeant in the Air Cadets or whatever, or on a rugby team at school or in the debating society. That's what they want. I mean, and the great thing about doing that is if your grades aren't that great, my grades were poor, because I've done everything else. That's why the Navy turned around and went, fine, look, we realise, you've got that seesaw, your grades are down, but everything else in your life is really high. And some people, if all their grades are up, but they haven't done anything else, there's no reason to take that person because they haven't demonstrated any kind of leadership. They haven't demonstrated any kind of purpose or commitment or effort. They haven't had a challenge in their life. At OASC, they will say, tell them about a challenge in your life and how you overcame it. Well, if you haven't had any challenges, how can you answer that question? So I think that's the problem. I don't see it as a north-south divide. I just see it as young people that have turned off the internet for a while and gone and done something very tangible that they can show the Air Force, and those that have sat, I don't know, watching YouTube videos or whatever kids do nowadays.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk for the next hour, but we shan't.
Sure.
But I have a mini slice of that because I've run the Grim Reapers, and we have just so many people try and join. Okay, people watch the videos. This is fine. Okay. I'm not slagging them off. This is fine. They watch the videos. They come in and they join. And then they get a plane or a couple of planes and they learn to fly and I want to join now. And we got to the point where we can only take a few in. Like the RAF, we've only got a little budget of time or money or whatever. Have a few in, you're going to have the best of the best. And who I take in now? So 99% of people that just send me a message say, I've got these planes, I've learned to fly, can I join now? I say no. And you have to, like to the RAF, you have to be able to prove that you're going to bring something other than just flying, because 1 million people can out sit and fly a DCS now. You've got to bring something in terms of what they can do, how they can help other people, how they can train other people, or some other way earn their way in. You can't just sit and ask. You have to actually do something physical, tangible, that I can see helps the community or something. That's how we're hiring now. So it's kind of the same thing from that. You've got to be proactive and show leadership and whatnot. But anyway, let's push on. Yeah. But then, great answer. Yep. Did you ever employ parachute-based loiter capability of the alarm missile? How interesting! It is an effective. Is it an effective way to shut down an area, as it sounds on paper? So my understanding, very quickly, is that the Tornado could carry the alarm, and a way you could use it, which is, I'd love to see this in DCS, is fire it up into the stratosphere, not literally, but fire it up nice and high, and it loiters up high, down on a parachute, probably listening passively, and then when a SAM turns itself back on, when the Tornado's gone away, it shoots down and gets it. Something like that, isn't it? Yeah,
so I was an electronic warfare instructor. Now the alarm is out of service, so I can talk about it, but obviously I can't talk about every single mode and everything else, and I've forgotten more than I ever knew anyway. But in effect, what we realised was probably the way the alarm was going to work best, without going into super amount of details, was the SAM operators looking up in the sky and seeing these contrails and thinking, hang on a second, there's tornadoes out there, they've got alarm on, these things are hanging above us in parachutes. So we'd have what's called a procedural shut-off, i.e. they would just put the radar into a dummy load and not emit, therefore the alarm wouldn't be able to see the radar. Now, we don't know, of course, whether alarm was ever effective in anger. I don't think it was ever. I think it was deployed. I think there was one in a Belgrade museum, but we never knew. And that's the thing about alarm: you'll never really know whether it's either the alarm has shut down the system or whether the the operators of the system have got procedures that when they see contrails, if they are on day, they will shut down, or whether they're listening to our radios and they're hearing the comm of us launching alarms and they shut down because of that. But you don't know. I mean, I had many modes, and I carried it. I never used it. But so I think the idea being is that the way we used it on things like Flag is we'd go in as SIAD and we'd launch these things. So there are over all these other things that would make the SAM operators, as I said, procedurally shut off, and that meant the package could fly through unmolested.
I mean, that's the thing. It doesn't matter. You could take the bloody warhead out if you want. As long as they're scared to turn their radar on, they've done their job. Yeah. You could fire a dummy. You could fire just a potato with a parachute above them. They would think it's an alarm.
It's not a massive bomb. I mean, you have to remember what it's not like a £1,000 going off. It's all it's designed to do is explode the warhead and cut cables, cut dishes, maybe people, but the operators aren't really. Don't get me wrong. It's probably not what's going to happen. And that was the thing. It was just going to cut cabling and just cause you to cause that SAM to be out of action. It wasn't a huge warhead. It's not a bomb.
Yeah.
It's a missile, like a AIM-9 Lima or something. So it would just cause damage to the system. As an electronic warfare instructor, my job was to employ these things, and we worked out on timing and stuff how to saturate an area with 4 tornadoes with 4 alarm on for up to a 20-minute period of time, so we can get packages through. It's like when you call Magnum, isn't it?
Yeah.
If a SAM operator hears Magnum, he's like, I'm just going out for a smoke quickly. yeah, we're going out for a cup of tea. It's like, that's all. So
absolutely.
That's probably the best one.
And just
I never fired it. No, I never fired it.
Just to touch on one thing you said there, and of course, the beauty of firing against a radar is that all radars are always going to be very, very delicate by virtue of what they are. So I remember when the AGM-88C, the whatever friendly fired in the Gulf War. I can't remember the warhead size, but it's not a 1,000-pound bomb. It's maybe a 40-pound warhead or something, which militarily is quite small. And all it had to do is pepper a few bow ties or whatever against the dish and put it out of alignment by 0.5 milliradian, and that's it. It's a dead dish. You've not got to blow things up.
But it's a heavy missile to carry as well, and it was very draggy on the jet, so you'd have to dedicate your aircraft to that mission. You couldn't be multi-role, really. You were a SEAD platform at that point.
Yeah, roger. Excellent. Right, lovely answer. I'm learning stuff. Let's push on. 8. If you could fly right, so this one here, next question, we ask everyone, it's just a GR thing, and it's pure fantasy, okay? As long as it's a real plane, that's all you have to answer. No further thinking. If you could fly any aircraft in real life, but with nothing, no, just flying the aircraft, anytime, any region, what would you want to fly? Like top trumps, like driving a Lamborghini or something.
Yeah, no, I haven't. It's not something I've really. I mean, there's some classics out there, isn't it? I always thought Gripen was, is a great airplane at the moment, and I know Gripen pilots, but I don't know really, to be honest with you. It sounds silly. I did enjoy the Tornado. I was very fortunate to fly that, and it would be great. I mean, when I got on X-plane and was flying Tornado on X-plane, it did bring it back. All the PTSD came straight back. So I'd be happy to jump in the big jet again. Well, I could be out in Saudi flying it. I just don't want to be in Saudi. And to me, it's not about the jet. Unfortunately, it's about the people, and it always has been. So it was community based. I'd like to have flown Jag. Jag would have been pretty cool, I guess. I didn't feel I needed to fly a Harrier. It's funny with the communities, to be honest, because anyone not flying Tornado really wanted to come and fly Tornado, move the wings around, use reheat, and the train following radar. All Tornado guys wanted to go and biff, hover. The Jag guys just needed a 12-mile runway so they can get airborne with their single bomb. So there was all this community banter, and it was great. Phantom. I'd like to have flown a Phantom.
That's a good
polyhedral
choice.
Wings and anhedral tailplane. The Phantom would have been a lovely aircraft to fly. I've always been a fan. It's what got me into flying in the first place, was the F4. So yeah, flying a Phantom would be probably. There is one for sale for $3.5 million. So
I'll get 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just get 2, park them up. So there you go. Yeah, I was a big F4 fan.
Good answer. Yeah, I remember them. I think they're still flying, aren't they? They must be. Yeah, they're still flying in some air forces, aren't they?
I don't know,
but
he's got rid of them.
But they're very, very cool plane. And again, they did wonderful things for getting me into airplanes a long time ago.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So that's our first F4 for that question. Looking forward to seeing your videos when start using DCS World. Tim, will you be doing any instructional videos, taxi, takeoff, landing pattern? That's kind of what you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think I am. I mean, I'm not the guy that's going to sit up there and teach you how to use a lightning pod. And to be fair, it doesn't really interest me that much. I'm very respectful for the community, for people that do that, because I'm not in that position to put that amount of time in, because I'm running 2 companies at the moment, and I'm on a funding round, which I have to put a lot of effort into for building a new aircraft in the United Kingdom. So it's hard for me to. I mean, this hour was quite hard for you to get from me, and I understand that. Don't get me wrong. Now, in fact, we can run longer than this as well, because I've moved a 2-hour slot out, but just in case. But it's so I think mainly the things I'm going to be doing are getting up. They're making DCS look pretty, because it does look pretty, and I'm interested in making films that kind of enrich your watching, your watching pleasure. So I'm bringing audio and visual into that if I can, and I will make films, I think, that are, I would say educational, not instructional, of course. And what I mean by educational, it's I like talking about mindset. And motivation and challenge and purpose. So that is the life of a pilot. If I can bring that across to people and enhance their flying from that, and if UCAP can do the other side for me and do that technical stuff, then I think we're going to make some great pilots in the community here. And some of them you could put these guys in a flying training and you could skip a stage, I reckon, and they'll be fine.
I've got a we did a lesson. We do lessons, okay, and we're not professional instructors. I'm just Ours is just like, we're just guys. We do our best, but that's it. We gave a lesson to a retired F-14 pilot, or Rio, I can't remember now. We've just done so many, and he said at the end of that, and this will probably always stay with me. I wish they taught me like that when I was in the Navy in the 70s, when they was learning the real time. I wish we had tutors like you that sat and listened and really knew their stuff. And I was like, are you serious? Like, we haven't got we don't barely know what we're doing. And
that is awesome.
I don't know if that was good or bad. I don't know if that showed you how bad their training was, or but I just found that, it's one of those things that will stick with me, obviously. But
I'll be honest with you, though. I mean, I'm ahead of all training at Aerialist as well. So I look at something like DCS. In fact, the Royal Air Force called me up, and I can't tell you which organisation within the RAF, but they watched my videos and they said that is a very, very low cost way of us getting significant amount of training without having to go and pay CAE millions for a sim or something. They're like, can we talk to you about it? And I said, yeah, of course you can. I'm a business now. I'm just going to charge you like tons of cash to chat to me. But what I meant was, I know, that's why I'm doing it. Because DCS, I'm able to get in DCS, learn flows, routines, subroutines, procedures. I'm able to practice my comm. I'm able to go and really think about the weather before I commit myself into it. I'm able to go and look at threats downrange. And one of the ones I'm going to do pretty soon is an F5 versus F5. I'm starting small because I don't want to, you know what I mean? But I'm going to go and fight an F5. And I've never fought an F5, and I haven't even practiced fighting an F5. And that's the whole point of it, is I want to analyze the aircraft. I'm going to pause it and go, right, let's talk about what you're about to fight. Because you've got to have a game plan before you hit the merge. And I think that's what I don't see people having sometimes when I watch these servers. They go into a fight and they react to what the other guy's doing.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, guys, if you do, this is how you're living your life, by the way. You're reacting to what's going on around you. You haven't got a plan, a purpose. You haven't got a 10-year plan. If you don't have a 10-year plan, strangely enough, you're not going to get to where you want to go in 10 years. The people that get there have a plan, and the people that win air combat. And I gave a talk at Renault Formula One recently about this, and it was when second place means death, and they're all a bit kind of shocked like this. But it's true. In air combat, when you meet the merge, one of you's not going home. That's just a fact. And as brutal as it might sound, that is a fact. So that's the kind of thing I want to bring into the DCS videos and really get the mindset working. I mean, I think that's how I have
an active Eurofighter pilot in GR at the moment. He is, but unlike you, his hands are tied. I can't put him in videos, so I can do stuff in the background. But he's mindset wise, he's just like you, and he helps us with this stuff. But I'd love to do some of that stuff with you about going into that kind of thing, planning. Okay, Tim, there's a guy in front of me. What the hell should I be thinking at this time? Because at the moment, as a gamer, I'm just reacting, and I just did a video about Boydism, about Boyd, and although he was reactionary in a way, obviously, but he always had to have that plan and had to know what would he do if this guy did that, and what would he do if that guy did this, and so on. And anyway,
that's all flying is. That's all flying is. People die because they haven't got a plan about what to happen when something happens. And I found that when I got everyone in the tornado on X-plane, I just like, I haven't even mapped the gear or flaps. I haven't mapped anything. I'm behind the jet all of a sudden, and before you know it, you're looking down, and then the jet turns upside down, and you spread it all over northern Scotland. So that's not nice. And so that's the thing we try and get in. It's like people die when they start reacting, and they haven't forecast an event's going to happen. So that's what my videos are going to be about. I've been told actually on my videos to stop talking about death so much, and I think this is I know, and I think I've actually kind of thought of this, to be honest. Like, why would someone say that? And it's been a couple of people, and I think they've been quite young. And I say maybe at school or in their home life, they're being smothered a bit. They're being too looked after. The brutal nature of the world they're going into is not being exposed to them in any kind of tangible way. And they don't want to hear about the fact that if you go into the Royal Air Force and fly jets, you may die, or what's worse than that is you may kill other people because someone else tells you to, and you don't know the reasoning. And then you live with that for the rest of your life. And that's exactly what I deal with sometimes when I coach people that have come out of the service. And I don't coach them straight out. I wait a year, but we try and undo that work, because that's brutal, going into conflicts that you realize now you didn't agree with. Or you may, or now we're finding out actually you were fighting just some kid who was paid $10 to hold a rifle, and he wasn't Taliban. Of course he wasn't Taliban. He's just a 16-year-old kid with a rifle. So, but yeah. So I don't know what I'm going to do about talking about death. I think I might have to kind of tone that down a little bit, or maybe I just won't pander to the crowd and just carry on doing what I'm doing.
It goes to what we back with what we were saying before we turned the mic on. Like the thing I've learned is just pandering to the crowd. I found just becomes a downward spiral where suddenly, okay, oh look, he's pandered to us. Now let's complain about this. He's pandered to this now, and suddenly your hands are tied, and you're like, why the fuck am I doing? Why the f am I doing this? I don't actually enjoy this anymore. I've learned within reason. Don't say racist or, do you know what I mean? Don't say anything that's just really mean, but be yourself and do what you want, and the rest will follow if you want it to.
I think you're right. I mean, I've done a lot of writing in my I think I'm pretty thick-skinned, actually, to be honest with you. The problem with YouTube, of course, is the comments are anonymous.
Oh, it's annoying.
And you want to but then again, you can just ban people. I mean, there was one comment, and the guy obviously didn't like what I was doing, so I just removed him because he doesn't want to be there, right?
Do you read all of your comments?
I've got an app and I try and get through them because there's a lot of value at the moment, and there won't be in the future when I'm getting so many comments. But right now, on the last video I did with the F5, I had a mapping issue with the air brake with the thumb switch, and one of the guys said, "Oh yeah, that's quite common actually. What you need to do is this." Another guy said, "I need to do this and this," and so I wrote them all down. They're really useful comments. And there was a young lady who told me about the X-plane. She said the reason you crashed that tornado at the end was because you've probably got experimental ticked in the settings. I went in there, it was ticked, I unticked it, and then strangely enough, it flew like a tornado. You know what I mean? It flew like a tornado, landed on correct speed and alpha and everything. So the community are really valuable at the moment, and they will be forever. I think what's going to happen on my YouTube channel is the community is going to regulate that comment section itself, and I'll be able to stay out of it. And it's going to say, "Look, shut up," because what I'm finding is, if we're not enjoying something, then as you find, if you're not enjoying it, there's no point doing it. I want to come on and be entertaining on YouTube, but I'm very respectful for the work people have put in for the aircraft and the stuff like you guys are doing. But it's got to be entertaining, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be entertaining. That's what YouTube's about, else you're not going to watch it. So I'm a bit of both. That's what I'm 40, coming up 46 now. I don't really listen to sheep anymore. But
Roger, I do. So all 5 years, it's something I've always gone through. It takes 2 hours every day. I go through my comments every day. It's a complete waste of time in a way, I know, but it's just something part of my OCD. And and I don't know if you've already got this. It sounds like you've already got this, but you have to develop a real mentality for reading comments. You have to be able to separate. There's a lot of negativity. Now that's not always bad. You've got to separate the trash negativity from the constructive negativity. So that's a skill I've learned. Also, you have to develop, like you've already got, kind of really thick skin. You've got to understand how to react to what happens when people say bad things about you. You have to learn this stuff, which is, I find, actually a really good life skill that I've never had until now. So it's
you can't please everyone, and you shouldn't be trying to please everyone because you'll end up pleasing no one. You have to also remember, I started reading comments on YouTube because I've been doing YouTube a while now, and sometimes people just don't know how to write, and they don't put the correct grammar in. If you read it some other way, if you kind of think, is that guy being negative or is he just not writing very well? I would say about 80% of the time, the guy's just not writing well. He could be a young, a 12-year-old or something. I mean, you don't know. So I'm never going to write something negative back to someone if they've really kind of had a massive go at the videos. And one of the guys did. He said, I think I know who he was. I've got one hater. Well, I've got a lot of haters, but one particular hater who was one of my men on the squadron. He went out to Saudi. Yeah. And he, don't get me wrong, I can't say too much about the guy. He's a good guy, but I had to take him out with Fast Jet Performance because the stuff he was writing in the comments section there of my essays, I mean, young people read that, and he was just it was ad hominem attack. He was just attacking me personally because now he's left the service and I'd left the service by then as well. And there's nothing constructive in that whatsoever. So I said, look, mate, I'm not being funny. I'm going to have to remove you from this. Of course, more vitriol comes. But I think he's found me on YouTube again. So I'm always going to get one thumb down on every video. I'm always going to get one negative comment, And also, when you look at that negative comment, very often the guy, when you click on the name, they've registered yesterday. They've got one view, which is my video, and they've got one comment on my video. So, there's a guy just doing that again and again, and that's fine. I think people are probably jealous of what you do, Cap. I'm sure people are probably jealous of what I do, but we expose ourselves, don't we? That's what it is.
Yeah, just toughen up and take it on the chin.
Yeah, exactly. It's all good. It's all good.
Right. Let's push. Can you explain what the best moment in operation that you have completed? What the hell does? Let's try again.
Right,
10.
I saw that. Can you explain what the best moment in operation that you have been? Right, okay, fine. It's probably someone doesn't speak English too well. Been in operations. What's the best moment you had? Let's rephrase that question. Yeah. On ops, what's the best moment? I I've had some pretty horrible moments, to be honest, but that's ops, that's operations, and you'll carry that for the rest of your life, unfortunately. So the best moment, I mean, the best moments are kind of sometimes funny.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Yeah, so I remember I wrote about Skittles before, didn't I? When my nav, he opened a bag. The Americans put more Skittles in a packet of Skittles than the British do, and of course you eat American food. And the stupid thing was the lunch boxes they give you to flying are the big like shoebox sized lunch box. And so you literally, as you walk into the jet, you're ripping all the stuff out, and you're putting it in like your little flight bag because you can't carry a shoebox. There's nowhere to put it. And they used to give us things like Skittles and sandwiches and bottles of water. I got a mask on trying to keep me alive. So I used to say, you can either starve and live or eat and die. If you don't get a choice now. So we used to take it in turns. My nav, he just, I was paired up with an American nav for the first stint, and the second stint changed around a bit actually, but I had a woman nav as well, and she was great. I mean, they're all great. So he had taken a pack of Skittles airborne, whereas I hadn't, because what you can do with a pack of Skittles up there, you know what I mean? How are you going to eat that? So, but he said, I wrote in an essay, didn't I? I remember it's clear as day. He said, I've had a bit of a mistake back here. I'm like, what have you done? He goes, I don't really want to tell you. I said, tell me. He goes, I've had a Skittle explosion. And what had happened is the packet of Skittles had ballooned up. Of course it does, because the air pressure. He'd managed to get hold of it, but in doing so, he'd punched it and he'd blown this Skittle packet up. So he'd turned the jet upside down about 20,000 feet, tried to pick Skittles off the canopy. I mean, there's that. There's not getting, some of the trails with tankers, horrendous. But when I remember coming back from North America, it's not an ops story, but it's come back we bought the jets back from Flag. We flew from Bangor back into Porto, I believe it was, on the wing of a tanker in cloud the whole way, looking at a light. I mean, it's horrendous. So, but when you finish that and you realise you've got the capability to do that, that's a good feeling. Anything really on ops when you come back, is a plus thing, really. I mean, especially if you haven't had to drop bombs on people, that is a plus for me anyway. I know that for sure.
Yeah,
so, I suppose. Yeah.
We have some guys with PTSD. We have some army guys from Afghanistan. And
do you find the flying helps them? Because I find
they can look and then lose themselves, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, exactly that. I was saying this to Simon. Who I fly with. He's great to fly with him because he's just a great pilot. So, but I was saying to him, when you're immersed in this, you're not thinking about anything else.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And it really seems to lower. My anxiety and everything is a lot better because of the work I did when I came out of the service. And I had to do that work. I was hit with some pretty nasty things that happened, and I had to do it. I probably did it 10 years before most men do it, to be honest with you. And that's why I run spin recovery now, so I can pass that knowledge on and we can get that work done, so you can enjoy the rest of your life and spend time with your family. But when I immerse myself in DCS, it seems to really kind of reduce any tension that I might have, which is really cool because you're learning procedures, processes. We say don't take your feelings airborne. That was a classic phrase from the military. Leave your problems on the ground. And the reason we do that is, of course, there's no time in an aircraft to start thinking about, what the wife said the night before. You don't need that at all.
I agree.
DCS is very similar to that.
I agree. This may not have any bearing to you or not, but from a kind of gaming point of view, you don't really get that kind of loss, immersion, whatever the word you want is, in other kind of games, like the ones where you just go around, shoot someone, you die, you go get up again, you shoot someone, you die. You just don't get that. But in DCS particularly, and in fact, and only that I found, because it's I don't want to say realistic necessarily, but because you're constantly having to fight gravity to stay alive, and if you do die, you can't just you have to fly 100 miles to get back again. You get really immersed into it. It really does become real, and like you said, all the operations, the buttons, everything's setting up. By the time you've gone and landed, and you've come off the computer, you're like, what was I worrying about before this? I can't even remember, because I've been so...
You're on VR as well?
I can't, and because of the job that I do, I can't, so I'll never be able to do VR, but VR, but I understand the concept of how it makes you actually be there.
Well, I was crewing in this morning to an F-18 at Nellis to do a flag mission, and my flag mission was at night in Vegas. In Nellis. So I did night CAS on something called Black Flag, which is a highly secretive version of Red Flag, which is obviously why it's back in 2007, but it is a criminal offence to talk too much about the exercise. So, and it's like you will get locked up. No two ways about it. You get locked up. Fact, I've seen it happen. So. But so when I got airborne, well, actually, when I'm on the ramp programming stuff into this jet, I had the same feelings that I had when I was on flag for real. Like, I don't want to mess this up. And I was sitting there going, Jesus, I've only got like an hour. What's going on? And it's like, don't mess it up, don't mess it up, don't mess it up. And it's exactly the same feeling, as if you were there for real. It's look around the cockpit, squaring yourself away, making sure everything's right, following the F-15s out who are following the F-18s out, trying to find my lineup card, which is a card that I have. And it will show me which order we're all going through the hold at, what's our push times, what the code words are. It's just all that. It was immersive for me, and I like that now. My brother took the mick out of me yesterday. He said something like, "Oh, how are you doing flying your simulator vids?" And I'm like, you know what? I'm giving a lot of value flying those vids. I mean, he's still flying. He's a pilot with Emirates, as I said, first officer, and he's a great pilot. And he was having a bit of a dig. Cool, I get it. Your brother does that. It's just one of those things. But the truth is, I can do these videos, hopefully give something back to the community, and that helps me out as well. It keeps me kind of connected to aviation in a way. That means I don't need to go and jump in a little light airplane and spend £120.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've just had a week and a half off. That's very, very rare for me. I usually do it every day, all day, every day. And one thing that shocked me was how the realization of how when we do our big mission, we do big missions with maybe 50 humans in and 100 bad guys or whatever, and the stakes are high. I know it's just a game and nothing matters, but because you've got 30 buddies behind you relying on you to do that SEAD job or they all die, the pressure becomes. Now we're used to it. I know from the outside point of view it's all just make-believe fantasy stuff, but when you're in there, it really does feel like life or death. And the week and a half I had off, I realized how stressful it is. I think in a good way. It's constructive stress. But my week off, everything kind of detensioned. And I was like, God, you know what? These missions are actually really... And that is, for me, a part of the immersiveness as well. How I'm sitting, just like you said, sitting on the runway, following the F-15s up. But also, mustn't make a mistake. Everyone here is counting on me to do this one job. I can't respawn. You only get one life in our missions and stuff like that. And that gives you 100% brain... Because it's very rare, I don't know if you'd agree, to get 100% of your brain on a task, yeah? So if you're doing a task, you tend to drift and think about other things, don't you?
Yeah, sure.
But every single neuron is in there thinking about doing this job. And it's very hard to find something else like that where you get that absolute concentration, which I think is a healthy thing. Either that or I'll die young, I don't know. But
you don't want to... that is the life of a pilot, by the way, is the constant fear of letting your buddies down. It's a constant fear every day. That's the life of it. So when you go on a ground tour, I had a part ground tour. I was still flying part-time, but I do remember I flew my entire 20 years. Unfortunately, I should have taken 3 years off, but I did do 3 months where I didn't fly. And I remember like all that tension went. It was like, oh, this is actually being an officer in the Air Force is quite easy. You know what I mean? It's all I got to do is turn up at a desk and type, go home again. I haven't got to learn my boldface for this. I haven't got to go, be the bouncer in an ACM sortie. So yeah, that is unfortunately the life of the pilot, and it's constant. You're constantly being judged, and that's just what it is. And you're doing the same thing. You're holding yourself to a certain standard, which is what us men should do, by the way. And a lot of us don't, and those are called boys. But you're saying, I want to perform to not let down the other guys who've invested a significant amount of time in allowing you to be in there, allowing you to go and do this. And that's really admirable to see. I mean, you've obviously got some good guys in the regions here.
We do. Okay, that's awesome. Let's push on again. You may have no input in this. It's probably not your field, but I'll ask anyway. Are DCS missiles really that shit? Do you have any input on that?
Well, a missile is designed to miss. It's clues in the name. Don't get me wrong, but not missing by the.
Well, I've got.
I don't know. I've seen some videos. Well, so are we talking about BVR? Are we talking about?
I don't know. Obviously, someone who can't speak English very well. But there is a tangent. There's a tangent we can go off here that's actually quite interesting. So in DCS, as long as you're within parameters, ballistic parameters, a missile will always hit you 100% of the time, every time. Right. It'll hit you. That's the first thing Simon was complained about when he came. He's, in case people don't know, he's a backseater for a Tornado and a Buccaneer, and he's also done, like Tim, he's also gone and done business out of training and stuff like that. And he says, no, real missiles aren't like that. SA2, SA6, SA11. If you're necessarily, they miss. Just like you said, they do miss. Even if you're in ballistic parameters, some of them will just go funny for reasons I couldn't possibly understand, and a lot of people wouldn't understand. And whereas in the game, in DCS, as long as you don't actively dodge them, they'll hit you every time. Now, I don't know if people have input on that and whether that's what people want to see, but that's a massive variation between real life, and these are real life pilots we're talking to here, as good as we're going to get, and DCS. So that was my only tangent.
Okay, that makes sense, because I think the little F5 has got little missiles, AIM 9 something, and I haven't really played around with that because I'm going to do it for the first time in 1v1. Now, as I said, I was an electronic warfare instructor, so surface-to-air missiles was what I did. That's what I did, surface-to-air missile systems and the defense against them. And I do remember I had 2 EYs in my airplane, myself, my navigator, an electronic warfare instructor, going into Spade Adam, electronic warfare range, up against an SA-11. And in the other jet were 2 weapons instructors who are obviously very much involved with weapons. They got shot down and we didn't. And it's because of what we did. And you can defeat an SA-11. You can keep it on the rails if you know what to do. And they should have known what to do, but they hadn't invested enough time in it. They were weapons guys, not electronic warfare guys. And I used to say, I can defeat certain single-digit, maybe double-digit SAMs with the kit on the jet and the right guy in the back or girl in the back, the right weapon systems officer in the back. So yeah, if we talk about surface to missile systems, if you launch a 2 at me or something, and I'm able to jam into that, I'm probably able to defeat the operator. The operator is the person you need to defeat, not the missile system necessarily. And a lot of that is done doctrinally. So you have to know about the country and know how they operate in order for you to be able to keep that weapon on the rail. Because once it's off the rail, you're compromised. So you're now reacting to something, and whenever you start reacting to things in fast jets, it's gone wrong. Your mission's probably over now. You have to drop all your bombs and tanks off, and now you're egressing, you're heading for home, and luckily you might not get shot down. So I don't know. I haven't actually flown against missile systems in DCS yet, but I will. And if you're telling me that if I'm in the MES, missile exclusion zone, and if someone fires at me, no matter what I do, I'll be shot down, then that's not realistic.
No, so as long as you don't make evasive, if you react, once a missile's shot, if you react to it, you can beat it. If you don't react to it, it will never go wrong.
I see. Well, how do you build it in though? How do you build it in though, Cap? I mean, you've got to because I mean, you'll then build. I mean, it's very. I would say that wasn't a bad thing for DCF to have, because what are we trying to do here as part of this game? We're trying to teach people that if you're illuminated by a fire control radar and you do nothing about it, that missile's coming off the rail. It's coming off. So don't be there. I mean, either have the SA to know where it is, or have the SEAD presence to do something about that in the first place. Step around the threat. I think one of the issues I see with this as well is the fuel plan never really works out in DCS. People don't think
there is no fuel plan. There is no fuel plan.
Fuel is everything when it comes to prosecuting targets and evading. It is just 100%. And I'm still getting used to trying to work out, what fuel I need to get back here, and do I need to divert a field? But of course, no one thinks about diversions. No one thinks about the domestic aspects of flying at the moment. I think the landing or the departure and recovery.
In DCS, if you run out of fuel, you just quit and go to start again. So it's rather than you're dying. So it's, I don't know. Yeah, but I understand.
Downside, isn't it?
Yeah, no, but like I said, when we do our big games, it's important that we all survive. So it's something maybe that we'd like to bring into it more. This kind of planning,
you could just
planning and stuff.
Yeah. At this waypoint on the way home, you need X amount of pound of fuel, and if you don't have that, you're not getting back. At least people know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is something we'd now, because what we've brought into it since Simon's joined, because he was a professional navigator, we've started bringing actual navigation about understanding your INS system drifts. It does in the game. How are you going to realign it? Looking for visual clues of how to, things we never thought about before. Because
F10, isn't it? Unfortunately.
But what we're starting to do is ban that, so that you have to understand this factory is 5.5 miles away from this river, which is near this lake, and that's how you actually find the bloody thing.
I'll tell you what will happen. I've seen this already a little bit. The more you bring in this realism, the more you'll retain the people that are already in the game.
Yeah.
But the more you might actually put off people from coming into the game.
It's exactly the problem we had. It's the exact problem we had, because we went all in. And we went all in, and it was complete realism. It was as realistic as we can get, but exactly no one was joining. And so what we're doing it again now, but just catchy monkey. just really slowly. Which was one tiny little tangent that I was listening to you talk there about how to beat a missile before it comes off the rail. I find that really interesting. And the biggest piece of advice I have, because I teach air to air. Again, I'm no pro. Disclaimer.
Okay.
But I've done it for years. I say the biggest thing is not reactionary. That's just what you have to do if you've been fired at. Fine. The biggest thing is your understanding of the system/people that you're fighting against. And you do fight against real humans in DCS a lot of the time. So you got to understand. You got to understand people, how they react, and you've got to understand all of the systems. Because in DCS, you can fight against any era. So you've got to learn so much about the range of that, the speed of that, the altitude of that, the alpha capability of that, the weakness of that, the strength of that. That you've got to understand the systems. Otherwise, you're useless. And that takes a lot of learning.
That's why I'm starting with F5. I start early on the F5 and just learning that before I jump into anything else. I mean, the F5 is a really nice little simple airplane to fly. It's a bit Hawk-esque, and I think I'm doing Hornet work as well now because I used to put some of my students on a Hornet. It's not a difficult aircraft to fly, but the operations of the system, of course, that's what makes it. And the flight model of that thing, I mean, the detail of it is incredible, isn't it? So
yeah, they really took it to a new level with that F-16, maybe the Tomcat as well, and that's good. And that's where the exponential bump came in. It's where our viewers, it's where everyone started getting into DCS, which is great. So I'm glad they put the time into doing it. Yep, so that's cool. Right, let's push on. I don't know what this means either, but we open up the questions. Do you get on with Russian Air Force? If you can.
Do you get on with Russian Air Force? It's probably from a Russian guy, isn't it? Do you get on with us? Pilots are all the same all over the place. Don't get me wrong. I've flown with Eastern European Air Forces. Some I can't talk about, but nothing's too serious. And we're all the same. We're all the same all over the world. Those guys are just as professional as us. I mean, sometimes they get it wrong, but we get it wrong as well, don't we? So the Russian pilots that I have flown with, not an exercise as such, but they were flying for other air forces. We're just the same. We get on. I mean, it's very funny actually. I was talking to an Iraqi Air Force guy, and I mean, I speak to people all over the world. Write to me. All different air forces write to me, and he loved my videos. And he, I've trained different. I've trained all kinds of nationalities, and they're all the same.
Yeah,
just pilots are just the same. Their minds working the same. They've got ambitions, hopes, and dreams. They're all mavericks. But of course, they're mavericks. Else, why would they want to fly? What I mean by that is, a pilot literally gets in an airplane and leaves the world behind. That's not a normal thing to do. To take that challenge of I'm going to go and do this and leave all you guys behind. That's a very maverick thing to do, isn't it?
AAA personalities, aren't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, they're not alpha. Alphas are not a very nice person. Don't get me wrong. And pilots are nice people because they're humble because they've been slapped around enough, on the way up, and they've felt enough trips normally that they've had friends that have been killed, and friends. I mean, I remember some of my friends that were killed, and they were better pilots than me, and that humbles you. It's like, oh crikey, what chance have I got if these guys have been killed? So I remember losing my first students, everything else. I mean, it's the same all over the world. So it is quite a humbling career. I'm quite privileged to have done it, to be honest with you. So yeah, I get on with any Air Force. There are some arrogant. I mean, there are some Air Forces, or let's say Air Forces, don't give it away, that are known to have a bit more arrogance than others. Let's say they're pilots. For example, one of the best pilots I ever flew was a Frenchman.
I knew you were going to say French. Oh, you're going to say French.
Yeah, no, he was. I couldn't ever do anything with him air combat. He just everything was slightly ahead of me, and it would just grind me down. And he was one of the only people in the squadron that I really struggled against. But he was a beautiful guy. Still a friend of mine. He's out in South France now. Lovely guy. But we've had Frenchmen before him who have been very, it's not arrogant, confident maybe. There tends to be this thing. They're bloody good pilots. Don't get me wrong. The French really are aggressive as anything with air combat. I mean, stunning level of ability in air combat, the French pilots I found. But they could be a bit, sometimes it could be a bit, overconfident, if that's possible for a pilot. I found the US Navy, some guys within the US Navy, I've got some great friends out there, but as opposed to say the US Air Force, I found the US Navy to be a little bit full of themselves. And that's an awful thing to say, because I'm not talking about everyone, because the guys I know, I've just had a couple of guys come into my mind that were nothing like that. So I'm generalizing, and it's a horrible thing to do. However, navies and air forces tend to have a certain something that happens, and therefore you react to it and you become what that is. I felt the Royal Air Force was a little bit more like that than, say, the Navy. The Navy, our Navy, Royal Navy, seemed to be a bit more humble than the Royal Air Force. But the Royal Air Force is junior service. It's only been around for 100 years. It's the most emotionally immature because of that. It doesn't have the grounding, is what we're seeing in American politics at the moment. They've only been around for 400 years, the Americans. So you can see these deep structural tensions within what's happening with race and gender wars over there and the political divide. And it's because they haven't got the history that, say, we've got. You know, and so some young air forces, I think, tend to, well, all air forces by definition are young, aren't they? Because they've only been around 100 years.
Exactly.
So some air forces are slightly different. In general, we're all the same. Yeah.
Roger. I mean, I think to close on that point there, I think that's a lovely, I can't think of a word. I'm going to say romantic is not what I mean. But it's a lovely idea that you've got the world, you've got these different countries that are all angry with each other and fighting over oil and whatnot. But the air forces, everyone's the same, and everyone can get on, and everyone has the same values in the air forces and the same drive. I think that's a nice thought, if there is such a thing.
I'll give you a small 30-second business story if you want about that.
Send.
You're right for me to give you a 30-second business story?
Yes, please.
With that. Yeah. Okay. So I work for many companies in a consultancy basis, but I used to work for one when I first left the Air Force, and I was out with an Air Force in Eastern Europe, and we were looking to see whether we could buy or lease their airplanes. It was a manufacturer. And one of the business sales director for this particular company, I can't say what it is, he gave us the big spiel. He wasn't a pilot himself. He was a big director. He gave us a big spiel about how great their product was, how it was definitely going to fit with what we needed it for. And of course, all this kind. I've done lots of research into it myself, and I had my, doubts, small doubts. But either way, it was a fast jet. It was a fighter plane, and we were looking to buy, I don't know, 8 to 12 of these things. And he was saying, this does this, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, great. And then eventually there was this young guy at the back, and he said, mate, can I have a word with you? And he was from this country. And I said, yeah. Do you want to go for lunch? I said, yeah, let's go for lunch. And he said, you're a pilot, aren't you? I said, yeah, I've just left, actually. He goes, right, I've just left this country's Air Force as well. And he goes, let's get some lunch. And we sat down, and he said, look, pilot's a pilot. We don't lie. It's not as good as you think. I can't lie to you. And then he came out with all the problems that the aircraft had. And that's what pilots do. Pilots can't lie to each other. It's just not fair, Isn't it weird? And he just told me all that. In the end, we didn't actually go through with it for different reasons, but it was just great that this guy was working in this company as one of their pilots on the airplane, and he just couldn't let it go. He had to say, look, I'll be honest with you, mate, because a pilot's a pilot. Because you don't lie to pilots because you don't want them killing themselves.
Absolutely, 100% respect, isn't it? And
yeah, exactly. You've been there. You've done the same thing. You're bringing food home for the family and stuff. And that's the awful thing about conflict. Unfortunately, you're fighting people that had exactly the same hopes, dreams, and ambitions you had. They just grew up in a different country.
That's the thing, isn't it? Love to have been a fighter pilot as long as there's no war. You have to shoot
yeah, or as long as you're on the right side.
On the right side.
But yeah. That's the awful thing about him.
Right, let's maybe some that are really not up your alley, so a couple of maybe 10-second answers, if even such a thing. So 13,
okay.
Would you ever want to fly a flanker? I don't know, answer that how you want. Would you ever want to fly a flanker? There you go.
I'm interested in the doctrinal nature of the Russian Air Force, so I'll give that a go. Yeah, fine.
Good. What do you think of Russian air-to-air missiles?
I don't know a great deal about them. They've come on leaps and bounds since I was on the front line, but they're the S-400 series, the SA-20, SA-21, that kind of stuff, area suppression surface-to-air missile systems are very impressive, let's say.
They really are. And that's doctrinal as well. That's because my understanding, they've got such a large space to defend. They couldn't do it with fighter jets. They've had to do it with huge, massive, great self-guided SAMs.
The only way we're really going to get those things probably is either from some amazing stealth technology I don't know about, or from special forces.
Roger. Yep. Okay. Well, at the end of the day, if you get a tornado down at 150 feet, I reckon you'll be all right. If
you knew the profile of the missiles, they're not very nice systems.
Okay. Well, no, I don't know anything about them. But did flying the tornado help you to get lucky with the ladies? Nice.
No, I met my wife. Oh, yeah, I get time for that. That's what people think, don't they? You get time to go socialise.
Hey, Top Gun, 1986. He goes and pulls a hot chick.
You're in your room, you're reading books, is what you're doing. My wife tells stories about the glamour of a fighter pilot, and she talks about the stuff we have to wear and the sweaty mess we're in when we come home. And guys, look at the bases in the country, right? So Coningsby, Lossiemouth, Marham, Bally. Are you finding women in nightclubs there? Because there aren't. Don't get me wrong. That's the problem. That's why you want to be a guy flying out of Brize Norton and live in Cheltenham and have a great social life. Fly multi-engines. So no, it doesn't. Flying jets does not help you get lucky with the ladies. I met my wife before I joined the military. Luckily. but
Roger,
I know guys struggle.
Virtual
Uniform helps.
a uniform, a uniform does help, I'm sure.
Uniform helps. You get
Yeah.
a chance to wear it.
And for interest, anyone out there that has no interest in this, but virtual pilots apparently the same. My wife says all I do when I go to bed is read DCS manuals, and it's true. That's what I do. I sit in bed with a 300-page A10 manual relearning this.
I know, awful, awful, is it?
Right, interesting one. Air-to-air fight. This air-to-air dogfight, I guess. Well, I guess that's what it's asking here. Tornado versus Tomcat, unless you read that a different way.
Tornado versus Tomcat. Well, I mean, they're both heavy. Tornado versus Tornado was like an aerial ballet.
God,
it was very finesse.
God, I can imagine that. It's just like everything in slow motion.
Well, you're burning fuel, and this. I mean, just you're in reheat the whole time. It is very slow motion. And there were some very good guys at doing it, but you've got to drop the tanks off for a start. You fight clean. So you don't put tanks on the jet, so you're very limited on the amount of fuel you've got. It doesn't last very long. I mean, the Tomcat the Tornado never had an air-to-air radar. It had a ground radar. So the Tomcat, if you're outside, BVR, obviously that's going to be the better system. But I haven't done the work, to be honest.
What's that, Stalker?
What's that?
I was thinking that it would be like an endless yo-yo.
Yeah, it would be.
Pretty much. Yeah, if
it would be, I'm sure. Yeah.
If you get
like
to fly
If
you get to fly the Tomcat at some point, which I hope you do, in DCS, and DCS is not perfect, but it's recommended, it's probably the most accurate out there, you'll be amazed, as I was, at how good the Tomcat was. I was never really a Tomcat man. I thought it was big, slow, heavy, 25 plus tons. The engines aren't that powerful, and its wings are this, and its wings. Go and fly it, and it's absolutely, assuming the model's accurate, it is used properly, incredibly. Finesseful is not the word. It's not twinkle toes, but it can be a really good within visual range fighter. I hope you see that.
I'll do a Tomcat versus Tomcat video. I'll use the AI or something.
Yeah. Also, you've got AI Tornado as well. You can use.
Yeah, of course you can. I mean, that's an idea, isn't it? And we'll have a look at that. That'd be another good video to do, wouldn't it?
Right. No, that's awesome, but we'll push on. As a GR4 pilot, what are your thoughts on the Tornado F3, which this is interesting, as an interceptor?
Well, it was an interceptor, wasn't it? It wasn't a fighter as such. It went up there, launched missiles at range and came home again. You didn't want to get into a turning fight because it wasn't very good.
No.
And it's almost like it was... I mean, the better variant, I think, was the GR4, especially at the end of its career. Crikey, the GR4, at the very end, the amount of kit on it was very impressive. But, F3, I don't think really... Yeah, I'm not going to slag it off because I knew guys on it, but I'm glad I didn't fly it. I'm glad I flew a GR.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because at that time, the GR, when I flew it, I was a low-level night attack pilot primarily. So that was my job, was airborne interdiction. And so not many guys get to fly around low-level at night anymore in the world, do they? So the F3, I'm glad I didn't do it. I never really liked air combat, to be honest. I found BVR, beyond visual range air combat, quite tedious to sit up there and grind on cap. It seems that there's no relative motion, is there? Because it's just sitting above cloud or something. Whereas, moving mud and a target strike attack was a lot of planning. The funny thing was, in the GR world, in the mud moving world, the 3-hour planning cycle happens at the beginning, and when you come down, there's a very small debrief, and then you go to the pub. In the F3 world, there's hardly any planning. You get airborne, and then you have this massive 3-hour-long debrief, and all the GR4 pilots are in the pub with the not through. But no, I mean, it's fine. I think it was fine, but I think the Typhoon is a world of difference. So
the F3s, I'm assuming they were kind of planned as kind of QRA. They'll go up, burn up, and intercept the bears or something. That was it? Yeah,
that's what they did. Yeah.
Okay. Right. How have the RAF changed your life through years? We've kind of covered this. Did you enjoy?
Yeah, I think
anything else you'd like to add before we move on?
Well, you can't expect to do 20 years in the military and not come out with some kind of baggage. And I undo this for a lot of men now, and it does take a couple of years. And primarily men, to be honest, because I think women sometimes leave earlier to start family, and rightly so. So you will come out with something. The career will damage you in some way. And I know there's from a lot of military people. I speak to a lot of veterans, especially ones with PTSD. I live up near Hereford, in between Hereford and Cheltenham. So I'm up at Hereford quite a lot with Special Forces guys, and conversations that we have are the same. It's like, right, now you're going to have to do something about this. And we do. And to be honest, a lot of it is about purpose, structure, physical exercise, moving around, hard work, trying to minimize your usage of alcohol, because the service very much still promotes that. Of course, it won't say it does, but it's still, It does. And actually, I had a bit of, not a breakdown as such. What did I have? I had a flight commander, a friend of mine on the same squadron. He'd been seeing a therapist, a psychiatrist for a while inside the military, still flying. And he recommended that when we shut the squadron down, he said, right, this is your chance. Go and see this dude as well. I saw him twice. And he immediately said, you're having 30 days off. You're not going back to work. My boss disagreed with that. And I kind of did as well, because I was in a very high tempo state. So I didn't have that 30 days off. And I carried on flying throughout. And the best thing I could have done was to listen to that psychiatrist, because 5 years later when I did leave, there's a lot of, it builds up in you. And there's a lot of tension builds up. Not so much as anger as such, but, I think I'm doing a YouTube video soon on a film called The Failing Aviator. I don't know whether you've seen it or not, but it's to do with the psychology of pilots from the 90s. And I'll review that for everyone. It's going to be about an hour long. And there's a reason that certain number of people join the military, and a lot of it is to do with what happens with your father in your early teens. And so you try and improve, you try and impress him. So you join the military, wings, medals, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's really what a lot of pilots are trying to do, is trying to get some kind of validation. And then you just bury your head. You work for 20 years, you leave, and you think, what happens now? What have I done? It's full on. The career is full on. And that's what young people don't understand. They think they're still going to have some kind of social scene in the evening and live where they want and have holidays when they want. And it's not true. It's not true. And no one can convince me. Every pilot you speak to in the Royal Air Force that's in or out will tell you that they miss leave, as in they don't take it sometimes. And it surrounds your whole entire life. And when you come out, for me, I'll tell you what happened. I walked into a hospital about, it must have been 18 months ago now, thinking I was having a heart attack, right? My uncle had a heart attack a few months before, only slightly older than me. And I had all this chest tension for like a couple of weeks, and it started going down my arm. And I've been out of the military for about 6 months. And I was like, what the hell's going on? I went into Hereford Hospital, sat in A&E and said, I might be having a heart attack. Can I just have a heart attack here? As opposed to at home? And they went, yeah, crack on, sit there if you want, have a heart attack. And anyway, I got the old triage, and then I went and sat with a doctor, a lovely Asian guy, a bit older than me. And he said, what's going on then? And I said, I don't know. He says, well, I'll rig you up to the ECG. He says, people your age don't have heart attacks. Just told him what happened, come out of the military. He went, oh, you just done the military thing? Oh, yeah, I get it. Yeah, we see a lot of that. He said, I'll do the ECG anyway, but let's talk about it. And 40 minutes later, he convinced me that it was to do with the chaos of civilian life. Compared
with the structure, right? Yeah, that's it.
Order I'd had for 20 years. And I didn't understand this life. And that's the work I do with men now. And within about 2 or 3 days, all that pain, all that tension in the body had gone away. Okay, because my mind was controlling the body as it does in flying. Your mind has to tell you to strap that rocket on and go and face someone with missiles that are better than yours. So same as special forces, says jump out the back of this helicopter and charge that rocket propelled grenade site. So the mind is overwhelmingly powerful, and it will damage you unless you do something about it, which is why we need to reconnect with our bodies. But I wasn't having a heart attack. I was having some huge anxiety thing when I first came out, and it was to do with the fact that this world here did not make any sense to me whatsoever.
So you must do
people didn't do what you told them,
So you do part of your teaching, do you do about people just accepting that, or to create their own kind of order out of the chaos?
Oh, we do a whole world of work on it. Yeah, the day starts. I think it's week 1. We talk about building a sanctuary. The first thing we do is build a sanctuary for the individual. The team of 6. And we say there's many different things we use. We use accountability cards, everything else. It's pretty full on, but we build a sanctuary. And what the sanctuary does, it starts with spirituality, activity, nutrition, and then commitments for the day. But it's your own space. So in the morning, we say you are going to bed at a certain time. You are getting up at a certain time, and you're getting up, by the way, not with your pets in your room, and you're not going to sit with your wife or anything, or go downstairs and play video games. You're finding a place in your house where you can be by yourself, untainted. This I'm giving you the free here because I think it's beneficial to so many men. And then we're going to do these 4 things. The spirituality might just be walking around your garden, okay? Just touching some flowers. I'm not talking about meditation or mindfulness. If you want to do that, great, we can do that too. I'm only talking about 20 minutes. The activity, now this is where you go and lift weights in your garage, you go for a run, you start a walk, it doesn't matter, or you just do some, as you're making your coffee in the morning, just do some light squats or whatever, maybe a few press ups, move. It's just about getting the body moving. It's not intense activity, it's nothing like that. It's a bit stretching, it's to get some blood flowing. Nutrition is where you write down what you're going to eat for the entire day. That's why people feel sad, because they're eating really, really rubbish meals and they're not planning it, and they're grabbing that burger when they should actually have something better in there. Your life will change if you change your nutrition, because you are what you eat. And then the commitments for the day is where you write down the things you must, you should, or you must, you might, you should do. And then you make sure that you tick off as many of those as you can so you can move on with the next day and feel like you validated it. So we do have a structure that we go into, and it changes lives. And I'm not even joking. There's men that have written to me saying, without this, they wouldn't be here today. They'd be looking at that beam in their garage for a long time. And there is a huge amount of suicide in armed forces when people leave. And we don't do something about this. It's almost like the Ministry of Defence will make you into a killer. That's fine. They make you into a warrior.
But they don't unmake you, do they?
Doesn't unmake you, no. And you could argue, well, should it? It's like, I think it should, yes, but it doesn't. And we have a lot of people on the street, and that's why I run the spin recovery course. It does cost money. I think it's like 1,800 quid now for those 10 weeks. And it does, and I won't change that price. It's half the cost of a UK funeral, and I want you to give me that money, and I don't want you to spend it on your funeral. And with that money, what I'll do is I'll invest that time back in you, and I'll build you into a proper man. And by the way, it's lifetime support. When you finish the course, every Friday morning for the rest of your life, there's an hour and a half session you can come into. Cool. You can speak to other men. It's the pub you never had. You know what I mean? And these men in there are men, because I don't take boys on the course. Okay, I take serious people that are willing to do the work. And if you can look at the content on spin recovery, and you can see the stuff we cover. It's pretty hard hitting stuff, to be honest.
Roger.
And it needs to be. It needs to be. But structure is one of the most valuable things we do. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. So from maybe psychology to maybe philosophy, did you choose jets, or did fast jets choose you?
Yeah, I was quite lucky actually, because I joined the Navy. And I joined the Navy, and the chances in the Navy is that you're going to fly a helicopter. I was cool with that. Flying helicopters off the back of ships, awesome. A lot of my good friends, best man at my wedding, he flew links off the back of warships. Very hard job. Flies for the police now. Now, what happened is when I was a naval officer, I was flying the Firefly at Barkston Heath, and there was a senior naval officer there, and I was like, everyone on the course was going, yeah, we're going to fly helicopters. And I said, can we fly jets in the Navy? I mean, are we allowed to apply to sea harriers? I mean, those are naval officers, aren't they? And everyone was like, yeah, but I want to fly helicopters. And I was like, oh yeah, I want to fly helicopters too. And then I just thought, do I? And so I spoke to some of the other guys on the course, because you train with Air Force guys, and they're like, yeah, I want to fly Harrier, I want to fly Jag, I want to fly. I'm like, that sounds pretty exciting actually. Yeah, I would like to fly something like that, just because it's, a bit different. So eventually I got really into it, and I did lots of research. And one of our instructors was an ex-jet pilot, and he was like, yeah, go and fly jets. It's good fun. So I remember walking from the mess all the way to where this senior naval officer lived. And I knocked on his door, and I said, can I have 2 minutes? And he said, yeah, what's up? And I said, well, look. He said, I've been thinking about this. I said, I wouldn't mind going jets if it's all right, because they streamed at the end of Firefly, an elementary flying train. They streamed you, wrote you your jets. I said, I promise I'll do loads of work. And it's quite comical to look back at this. I said, I'll put the effort in. I won't let you down. I promise you I'll get onto jets. I won't let you down. And he said, yeah, all right. No one else has asked. And it was that simple. My grades are good, but it was that simple. That's and weird. I use this as a lesson for young people. I'm like, if you don't ask someone for it, then you can't expect to get it. No one's going to come and give it to you if they don't know you want it. Go and tell them you'll do the work. Make sure you've done some work already. And the guy was like, yeah, why not? I'll put you through the jets now, mate. I'll fill the papers out for you. And yeah, fine, go jets if you want. I think I had like a week left or 2 weeks left before they streamed. And I tried to keep it secret for a couple of weeks, and then ended up being streamed on the jets and everyone on helicopters.
Oh,
isn't that weird?
That's
strange, isn't it?
It works weird ways. Even structured places like that can even work. It can be just what one guy hears from another guy in an office. Yeah, it can change completely your direction. But okay,
yeah, that's true.
This one, I don't know how you want to answer this, really. I don't know how you could, but how do you think the Tornado holds up against modern jets in terms of air-to-ground capability? So you're going to look at an F-35, a Gripen, anything you want to add to that?
Hornets, F-15s. Yeah. Fuel normally is a big issue with all these airplanes, and fuel. If you start carrying fuel tanks, you're draggy, which means you use more fuel. Obviously, Tornado had to carry 2 tanks. Our payload in Iraq wasn't, because we had a reconnaissance pod on as well, wasn't anything like the Americans had. And our speciality of the Tornado was low level primarily. They didn't like being up at 20, 30,000 feet in hot places. Typhoon is a lot more power. The engines are superb on that aircraft, so it can carry a lot more if they get the weapons integrated, which they seem to be doing quite well at the moment. But things like the F-15, Strike Eagle, F-18, Super Hornet, I mean, these jets carry a lot. There were wars we couldn't, areas we couldn't go into, and the Americans could. But the Tornado, I think it had its time and its place. Its place really was low-level Iron Curtain, at night, train following radar, drop bomb on bridge, or drop nuclear bomb somewhere, and then see if you can make it home. That was what it was designed for. But then when we start putting it at 20, 30,000 feet, it didn't want to be there. And it didn't want to hang stuff on it. And that's why the American jets were a lot more superior. And why you retire jets out, of course. Tornado, they keep jets on for a long time because they're quite expensive. So they kept Tornado on for longer than maybe they should. But towards the end, what Brimstone and everything, had a really great capability there. Had a very good precision capability with Brimstone. So often a weapon system, the Americans will turn around and say, guys, can you help us here? We need this weapon system. We need you to go and use it for precision strike. And they don't have that capability or that capability in theatre. So it was good in its day. It was good in its day. I would say its day was dumb weaponry, low level, at night, in hostile terrain with lots of surface-to-air missile systems around, which is what it should be if you're going to be a bomber pilot.
Yep.
That's what all bomber pilots want. Make it a fair challenge,
That's right.
That's what I ever wanted. It was, I'm going to try and shoot you. I remember one exercise, Red Flag, where one of the guys in the squadron was being hunted by this SA-8, and they were he knew he was being hunted because they had the land rolled radar was picking him up, but they were using optical tracking as well, and they lost sight. He went behind a hill, and because you get debriefed on this, all the SAM guys come back in and they debrief you. And you could see flashes of Tornado tail behind mountains. And then they lost sight of this guy, and they were looking for him. And then the camera swung around 180, and there was this massive tornado, literally a second out, with its wings fully back in reheat, and it had just bombed him. And he stood up this SAM guy stood up in the debrief and said, I have never seen that before. He said, that's the most impressive thing that's ever happened to me on this exercise. He said that was... And that was an electronic warfare instructor. Both of them were in that jet, 2 electronic warfare. The Americans were like, holy cow, I've never seen that. Blew their minds. It was and then for the rest of the exercise, all the surface-to-air missile guys were avoiding tornadoes. Because they didn't want to get killed. But yeah, it had its day. It was a great airplane. Loved it.
Awesome. Okay, right. So we've got to 20. We're clearly not going to do the next 22 or so. So are there any ones? I like to leave the last 5 or 10 minutes to my guys to ask some questions.
So I pick a few out.
Is there any just ones that would give a cool answer?
Right. What number are we on then?
We just finished 20. So if you can kind of scan down and just look at a couple of cool ones.
Yeah, I will scan it out. So 20. Let's have a look. Some of them are quite similar to the ones we had before.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Yeah.
You sure we just finished 20?
We're just my number 20. The green boxes. Yeah, the green boxes.
So when the jets are 5 minutes out, that one, yeah. Then followed by 20 minutes of circuits. Yeah, lossy. That's obviously for an engineer. We don't do it on purpose, but sometimes we get back in the circuit and the controller will ask for circuit training. And so although we say we're 5 minutes out because we want to land and go and get lunch, which would be a nicety, sometimes they ask for if you can go and do a PAR or circuits. That's why that is. Optelic, so 8 hour plus sorties, was taxing on the jets and crew. All you did was somewhere to be deployed. It was an hour and a half until we got into theatre, an hour and a half back, and on the way back, my longest sortie was 8 hours, I believe, and refueling 2 or 3 times. And I used to let my navigator sleep on the way back. In fact, we diverted into Kirkuk once after getting hit by lightning, and that was miserable, getting mortared and stuff. They had to come and rescue us. Our engineers had to fly by Hercules all the way across Iraq. So no, you can be closer to theatre, but LED is not a bad place. Well, it is a bad place, but it's comfortable.
Well done.
Right, charity organisation still treated as operational. I don't understand that one. Oh yeah, my charity. Yeah, so I wrote. What do I call it? I ran a charity in Afghanistan, and it was. Oh, I can't remember what I called it now. But we get loads of clothes in Anglesey to Afghanistan. That was it. And we distributed them through I'm not a Catholic. Well, I am a Catholic, but I'm not practicing. And we distributed them with the Padre when I was in Afghanistan on the ground with the US Army. We all went out. The charity doesn't run anymore. We did a lot of good with that, by the way. But the chance of being shot doing it were really, really high. And I'm not joking. We used to take out guys, real good operators from the US Army with us. So that was very difficult. And we did see a lot of that stuff get taken off the children in the orphanages and then put into the markets the next day. The Afghans treat their young very differently than how we do. No, the Tornado was underpowered in the medium level. It wasn't underpowered at low level. It wasn't underpowered at low level for what it is.
So it's optimized for low level. Was that the right thing to say?
Optimized for low level, absolutely. Okay. So if there's a German pilot saying it was underpowered, it's because he's using it in the medium level environment. Anything above 20,000 feet is struggle, especially with tanks with bombs on. I did train a lot of the Afghan Air Force I like Afghans, don't get me wrong, a lot of structural history and problems with the country, of course, but I trained them in NATO training mission Afghanistan with the police force and the army, and we worked with them in that, really. Not so much the Air Force, but I was working alongside guys that were training them. Yeah, I'm skipping a few here because I talk about it on my podcast anyway. Did you manage to train your female pilots? Yeah, I trained all the recent female pilots, in fact. I've got girls on Typhoon all over the place. It's really weird when I say we don't see them as differently to the boys. We don't, but no one believes that. I don't know why, just don't believe it. The women unfortunately, they do change themselves into, they kind of have to in order to fit in with the masculine environment, and it is a heavily masculine environment. And there's I've spoken about women. I've written essays on this about when fighter pilots cry, women and the end of vertical ambition, because they don't want to be bosses of squadrons. They just don't. They just want to fly airplanes, and then this is the generalization, because I do know a boss of a squadron who's a female, of course, but Nikki. But most women just want to fly some jets, and they don't want to miss starting a family. And although we tell women, yeah, you can have kids when you're 35, it's much better if you have them when you're 25. You know, if you have kids when you're 25, I haven't got children.
Much less chromosomal disorders, I can tell you that.
Well, just don't wait. You know, go and have kids and come back to the cockpit if you want to, but we understand if you don't. I was never targeted by SAM. Some of my friends were. I always wanted to be, but I never was. Only on exercise, unfortunately.
Of course.
Yeah, the electronic warfare instructor role is purely one that deals with the electromagnetic spectrum, so everything you can't see. So surface-to-air missile systems, the radars, seeker heads, things like AMRAAM, opposing forces radars, anything like that. That was my job, was to understand that and then to counter them. I love this. What was the Hawk 2 like after flying fast jets? The Hawk T2 will kill you faster than anything else in the Air Force. The Hawk T1 especially, the onset rate of G is a higher onset rate than Typhoon. Sorry, than Typhoon.
Why is that?
It will get to 7G faster than a Typhoon will. It's a lightweight aircraft, and you can throw it around. It's a sports car of the fast jet world. It probably is the most fast jet of all fast jets we have. Okay, I mean, insofar as the rawness of the Hawk T1, which is why guys love staying on it. So I think you mean frontline jets. Yeah, the Hawk T2 is a great training platform. I'm building an aircraft very similar to it now, modular, so it can keep costs down through serviceability and parts. That's airless. If people want to go and look at that,
I do. Can you spell that?
Sorry?
Can you spell that, please?
Yeah, AERALIS.
Thank you.
And the reason it's called that, the last two letters is information system, and then it's some Latin in there as well. AER is aero, and then ALA is Latin for wind, or
cool,
the CEO Tristan he came up with that, which is fantastic. But it's an ecosystem of training and loyal wingmen, remote carriers, UAVs. That's the whole point of it. It's modular for the Air Force now. The Air Force fly 47 types. They want to get that down to 10. And all the types that the Air Force fly, by the way, are made by different companies. Think how
it's a lot
bad
of
that is,
isn't it? And yeah,
it's bad. So the Hawk T2 is great, but it can't. Fortunately, it's great for putting guys on Typhoon. It's not great for putting guys on F-35. Whereas the airless aircraft is designed purely for fifth generation, purely fifth generation, low cost, half the price of a Hawk. And we are working with BA systems. Malaysian, yeah. Well, I went to Malaysian. He's flying fish, Sampadu. That was great. That was with the Singapores, the Malaysians, Australians, and yeah, that was good exercise actually. Hot, hot. Flying over the sea. We used to be a maritime attack squadron. Don't attack ships. But do you attack ships in DCS, by the way?
Oh yeah, I tried to.
Do you get shot down?
Yeah, most of the time, yeah. Because you can't hide. You can't hide.
Yeah, strange that, isn't it? Because if you're going to put something like that so exposed, you're going to arm it to the teeth with a really great kit. So I was with Simon on one of the missions, and he says, "Can you come fly with us?" Like 7 a.m. or something. I'm like, crawling out of bed. We end up on carriers, getting airborne at night in F-18s. I hadn't mapped anything to do a harpoon strike on the Knettsov, and I'm like, could you just have an easier mission? I mean, what is going on with this? You know, it's shooting the Knettsov. So actually, you know what? We're almost finishing these now. I could probably race through them.
Yep.
Okay. So what do you take with you from your time in the RF when you left? Slight PTSD, to be honest, that I've got rid of. Well, I haven't got rid of it. We'll be there forever, but I've done work on it. I do work with other people now. If you talk to a group of young people considering taking on your path, what would be your advice to them, and how do you see the passion of fast jets into the hearts? I shouldn't need to see the passion of fast jets into the hearts. You either want to fly fast jets or not. And there is a good reason to not fly fast jets, by the way. There's some very good reasons to not fly it. It will occupy your life for a long time, and you'll probably end up divorced. I was lucky that I wasn't. And you become very insular as well. I'll speak about it all the time on website. What is it that nowadays you can consider yourself lucky? Just fighter pilot in the sky. Oh, it's spot fighter pilot. Fighter jet in the sky. There's not many jets flying and you're probably looking in the wrong place. So go to the loop on a nice, I say go to the Mcuntlith loop when the weather's been poor for a couple of weeks, and go for the first nice day, and you'll see everyone going through the loop.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's what I do, and sit there, or get on one of those forums, LFA 17 or whatever it's called, and ask the photographers. Those photographers know when to catch the jets flying. What's the future of the Air Force in your opinion? Well, it needs to get rid of. Can you speculate what it will look like 20 years from now? Well, I'm helping to build it, hopefully, for the company I'm in. It needs to get rid of its woke agenda that it's in and realise that it's a fighting force. And if you speak to anyone, they're trying to change the term airman because it's gender biased. And if you speak to anyone in the Air Force that isn't totally woke and a 3-star, they will say that's utter rubbish. Even the women are like, yeah, we understand what airmen mean. It's inclusive. It's just a word. Soldier, sailor, and airman, they're all the same. So, but the Air Force is young and it wants to do the right thing, and I get it. That won't last long, by the way, because it won't attract the talent it needs, and people will leave. So it will come back to the center. But in 20 years, it's going to be a highly technical force. It still is, of course. It will be very space orientated, not necessarily vehicles, but weapons and armaments or something. We'll be using space. We're looking heavily into drone technology in the company I'm working with at the moment. I mean, when I say drone, I'm talking unmanned vehicles, loyal wingmen that are accompanying, say, F-35, that kind of thing as well. So it needs to transition, but it needs the right people to transition. And at the moment, there's an issue being a senior officer, I believe. And that's that if you're a senior officer in the Royal Air Force, it's in your interest not to make significant change because you might mess it up. And if you mess it up, you're not getting to the next rank. So if you can just keep the status quo as it is, maybe just tell people you're going to make some great change, get promoted up to the next one, and your pension's better, then we need to bin that somehow, and we need to take more risk. We need to go with companies like mine, for example, which is why we're in significant talks to the Royal Air Force now, and they're being great. I mean, they are, because I think they know they need to bring companies like ours in. I'm very passionate about the service still. That's why I speak to guys in it all the time, and why they write to me and stuff. And I keep doing fast jet performance. Right, 1v1 training dogfights. Can you recall the most dramatic one with someone special in your opposing jet? That's that Frenchman I talked about, kicking me around the sky. I learned so much from it. And I mean, flying with students, I wrote one about the passionless pilot when I'm doing some ACM with a student, and he just turned around, he's in the same jet, turns around and says, I'm not passionate about this anymore. And I said, good, nor am I. I haven't been for about the last 10 years. You can go read that essay if you want on fast jet performance. But the truth is, passion's fleeting, fast burning, not going to get you through life. You need a purpose, right? And that French guy was I've got this kind of saying, like, when you're fighting your jet in DCS, there's speeds you need to be at to fight, okay? And I don't know what those speeds are. I haven't looked at the energy curves. I'm sure you guys have. If you're going to be fast, be fast. If you're going to be slow. Transition between those things as quickly as possible. When you're in that mid area, you're neither in a rate speed or a radius speed. You're in neither. You're in a transitional speed. It's messing you up. That's one of the big secrets to dogfights. We never used to call them that, by the way. We just called them BFM. I don't think I've ever called it dogfight, but okay. So it's about that. It's about what am I going to do at the merge? What I want to be on speed, and I want to use my environmentals, and that's what I'm going to talk about in my DCS vid. When I talk about environmentals, it's like, how dark is the sky? Where's the sun? Can I hide in the sun? Because you can't fight what you can't see. So there's a lot more to just chasing a jet around the sky. Knowing when to disengage. The only way you're going to really kill anyone in a dogfight now, close in, if you can't get missiles, is snapshot guns. There's no gun tracking really anymore. Well, maybe there is, but probably not. No one really. No good fighter pilot is going to let themselves get tracked by a gun skill. It's just going to be a snapshot guns, which means fleeting pass. DCS about the most common tactics. What do you think of DCS about the most common tactics and patterns people apply in the sim compared to the real world? I haven't really flown much enough to actually warrant that yet. Sorry, I haven't. One of the things I will say though is in the real world. In the real world, when you're turning, we do something called battle turns, which is about a mile split, and we cross over each other. So we're always parallel fuselages at about a mile space. You guys might be flying that. That in itself is a bit of a skill in order to roll out in the right place. But it becomes second nature when you've done it forever. But also, people are flying at weird speeds, and they're flying at ill-defined heights, and they're not really flying to a heading. And so people are closing in, and they're going out again. The guys down the back, as in the back pair of jets, don't really know what's happening. I would set speeds or run a time on target or say I'll fly this route at 12,000 feet at 360 knots until I get to waypoint 7, and then we'll speed up to 450 and descend to low level. I think a lot of it, a lot of people's capacity at the moment is being taken up by the fundamentals that they should have learned, but they never did. They went and fired AMRAAMs at flankers. So those fundamentals are taking up cognitive capacity. And I said this to Simon. I said, if there was a way of you getting the fundamentals done, like, guys, just flow a route, no weapons, nothing, just flow a route. We're going to do 8 waypoints, and we're going to do it in a box 4 formation. And I'll come and do it for you if you want, and I'll talk to you about basic domestic discipline of a formation, not weaponeering, none of that shit. Just flowing around in a protective formation as a 4, maybe 1.5 mile split in the front, 1.5 mile split in the back, maybe about 2 miles between the front and back pair. So that you can self-defend.
We'd love something like that. Yeah, that's what we need.
I think that fundamentals, if you can get people involved in that, then it just stops them having to try and work out, why am I falling back, or why am I going, I'll use reheat, then fuel comes out of the jet. All these little things, they add up to so much. And that's why you have 3 stages of flying training. Because if you put someone straight onto Hawk without doing that, which is what's happened, unfortunately, in some cases at the moment in the Air Force, they'll struggle to get off Hawk. Last fight in the Royal Air Force was the guy called Tim. And what happens is you get out and they spray with a fire extinguisher, and then that's it. Normally, you don't have parties anymore. You might go to the bar with some people, but I was happy to go and leave because I've been on there so long. But I flew to the house I'm in now and did a strafe attack on it, and my friend Tim, who's in the back seat, just spoke about caravans for an hour. And he was going to go and buy a caravan. He was leaving soon as well.
Fair enough.
My wife saw the flight tape; she couldn't believe it. What was it? Oh, it took me 17 minutes from Valley to get to my house. You might be able to work out where I am now. What was the difference between the Grob and the Texan? And both were similar. Why not? This is the last 2 questions. And why not was only one of those introduced? I brought both those aircraft in as a requirements manager in the Royal Air Force, part-time flying on the Hawk T2 in the last 2 years of my career, 3 years. Yes, we should have bought a 2-aircraft flying training system. But what we did is we asked a company called Ascent Flight Training, made up of Lockheed Martin and Babcock Defence Services, to do our flying training. They didn't do it very well. I'm never going to take that statement back because I work closely with them. I understand the pressures and the difficulties with Ascent. I really do. However, United Kingdom military flying training system should have had a 2-aircraft system for fast jets. And I think it was the Air Force demanded 3 because that's what we always had. The Grob and the T6 overlap each other so much. The Grob is a great little airplane, don't get me wrong. I flew it out in Bavaria. Almost too good for that stage. It is too good for elementary flying training. You can do so much more on it. And what they are trying to run now, the Air Force, is they are trying to run some students Grob into Hawk. That's a difficult one. And they're also trying to start some straight on T6 into Hawk. Again, both of those are difficult, but with more simulation and synthetics, such as DCS and everything else, if you were immersing students with that, I think it could be done very well. It's just they've only got 1 sim on the T6, I believe, 2 sims on the Hawk T2, and those sims are used a lot. So very similar aircraft insofar as, okay, one's side by side and one's tandem seating. The Texan's a little bit faster than the Grob, but not much. So it's a shame, really. I think we could have just gone Grob into T2 with a lot more synthetics, but this is going back to 2006, remember? So back then it wasn't really known about. I don't know what state DCS was back in 2006. Do you think that DCX and groups like the Grim Reapers will inspire and attract new this is the last question, of future pilots to the world's air forces, and will be much more easy to train after all the time spent? I can't read the end of the question.
So can DCS itself be used as a training tool for the military? Within reason, I think so.
Yeah. And what's the last one? In the time spent in the sim. All right. And the Air Force doesn't care about your previous simming or any previous flying training central. Well, it doesn't. I mean, it's great that you can say, I mean, if you're in an interview and you're saying, well, I fly online actually, and I'm really learning about aircraft systems and flow patterns, and I'm with the Grim Reapers and they talk about proper domestic flying and responsibilities in airmanship and captaincy, I guarantee the Air Force will like that. They will listen to you and they'll be like, wow, you're dedicating time to something you want to do in the future. That shows that you're looking at it, you're thinking about it, and you're responsible. They will like that. If you're a light aircraft pilot flying around, again, they will like it, but they will take none of that into account, and they will fly, because Central Flying School can't, and Central Flying School will take you from day one of Royal Air Force flying, because they need to know the way it's being done is by the Royal Air Force. And so it might be great for you, and I think you'll find it easier to get into systems to understand aircraft and what's happening in the sky, especially with maybe the air traffic that seems to be coming a lot more into DCS now. A lot more with the weather and weather decisions. So I think what you guys do is fantastic. I just haven't got the time to do much with it with you, unfortunately. But I will send all my I'll annoy you and send all the young people that write to me to your way, and you'll just have to reject them. But yeah, it is obviously beneficial. Of course it is. it probably will inspire and attract new generation of future pilots. Whether they'll be easier to train, I don't know. I don't know whether it'll be easier to train.
You'd almost have to break them back down again and build them up again from scratch. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's good or bad.
I think that parenting has a lot. I'm not a parent here, so I'm not going to have a massive go at parents. I tend to be doing a job a lot of parents aren't doing with these young people by talking about hard work and consequence and purpose and sacrifice and carrying a heavy load and turning the computer off and doing the homework and going out and working for charities and finding a weekend job. It's not a nice world out. It's a nice world. It's a bit brutal. You don't want to be the guy that hasn't put the work in. And so I think a lot of people that write to me are not doing that work, and I know they're not ever going to make a cockpit. It's not much work. It's just consistent work. It's just make sure every day you're doing something, like you're going to your air cadets, you're helping out. I get some inspiring young people write to me, and they've come from really broken homes, single parent families, and they've somehow got a male figure in their life who said to them, look, let's do some work here. Let's get some fitness on. Let's talk about your exams. And that's enough for them to drag them up and make them realize that they can. Because I say to them, right, okay, so someone's got to fly these jets, right? That's what someone said to me when I was young. Someone's got to fly them. Someone's got to be an Air Force pilot. It may as well be you, all right? But make it easier for the Air Force to accept you. It's not difficult. Think about what an Air Force officer is. I mean, I say to people, just watch my YouTube videos and read my blogs. It's all in the blogs. It's there. That was the most senior fast jet pilot in the Royal Air Force. Wrong. That was the most senior fast jet flying instructor in the Royal Air Force, both flying instructor and tech weapons instructor. At the time, writing to you, telling you how to be a pilot in the Royal Air Force. I mean, what else do you need to read? That's a great start. I never had that when I was growing up. I never had any of that at all. I never had a YouTube channel where an ex-flying instructor is on there saying, guys, stop, let's talk about how I'm getting this wrong or whatever, and just talking about mistakes and how to rectify them and mindset. I never had that. And that's what I try and do for people now. I just say, look, come onto the YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out. And I know you want it. I can see you're interested in the videos. And then in the comments, just tell me what you're interested in, and I'll go make a video for you. How does that sound? I'll go make a video I'll do this for you. Because I know you guys are doing it from that technical point of view. And I can just see you guys getting better and better and better. And I haven't got the time to do the technical stuff. So I'm just going to do the airmanship, the captaincy, the mindset, the motivation. I think it's great. So, but yeah, I think the problem with training young people at the moment is a lot of young people probably are not putting the effort in they need to put in, so they're not selectable.
Yep. Yep. We could talk a long time about that and the reasons why. Yeah. And there are many, if systemic is the right word, but we shan't go into it today because that's a different chat. Just a couple of minutes. I did promise I'd bring some of my guys in who just want to ask quick questions.
Sorry.
Davros, do you want to quickly go?
Yeah, please. Hi, Tim. I'm not a virtual pilot. I have to say that straight off.
Cool.
Never been in a plane. Used to fly around the back of helicopters for a job.
Oh, yeah.
So we're an allied group to Grim Reapers with a virtual infantry game called Armour. However, it's interesting to hear you say that you paused your training programs when you were head instructor to actually let your instructors take time to become teachers, is how I read that, as well as just very good pilots. That said, you and Cap have also said that you're very good at assessing characters quite quickly. So what point in the training program would you know that you've got a candidate in the plane who will either pass, scratch by, be safe, be able to do the job, or absolutely ace it, become one of your French pilots that's going to take you over all the sky and just make mincemeat out of you? How quickly can you sum these guys up and say, yes, he or she's going to be a corker, this one, okay, but we're going to have to put a little bit more work in.
Yeah. So the first time they ever used weapons is on 4 Squadron at RAF Valley. In fact, 25 Squadron as well now, because they split the squadrons up. So basically on the Hawk, T2 at Valley is the first time they've looked at weapons. I think on the T6, they're starting to do overflights with weapons. I don't know, but I think it's actually on the T2. So but until you get to that stage, everything else should be squared away when you're flying, and now weaponeering is that phase. So this is the first time they've start to do something different. There's always a leveler with things like BFM, and these are always very difficult. It's about picture recognition. The people that we know are going to do quite well are the people that invest extra time outside the cockpit. So they'll be in the squadrons in the evening. They might come in early in the morning. The guys we really know are going to do quite well, and the girls especially, are the ones that are seen helping other people. So they're seen helping the people that aren't doing as well. And they don't need to, by the way. And it's not in their interest to. Couldn't care less. I mean, we have stopped whole courses before that weren't working, and we've literally stopped them from flying for a whole week, and we slapped them around. And because I can't give the same lesson to every student. I mean, I might hit a bird, and the other 3 students haven't hit a bird yet, so that student needs to go and talk to the other 3 students about hitting birds. So I think sacrifice is a quite good one. Humility, I always found in training to be quite good with a student. Willingness to learn, isn't it? If a student challenges an instructor, there's a difference between asking a question and challenging an instructor. I don't get an instructor challenged very often, because obviously these students realise that there's guys that have come back from theatres of war and girls, and it's not, so it doesn't happen very often. I haven't really seen it, but when we do have an attitude from a student, it would come straight to me, and they would come to my office, and we would sit down and have a chat. And I'm not that guy that goes, "Oh, it wasn't a pleasant chat." I'm not that guy. It is a pleasant chat. It's like it's a fair chat. It's like, do you want to be here or not? Because, I'm open about it. And sometimes a student would say, "No, I don't. I think I'm either scared, or there's always something in the background, or I don't want to go to the front line, or I don't think I can be." I wrote an essay on self-sabotage. We all do it, by the way. A lot of it's why we don't apply for the jobs that we probably should apply to. Very common, especially in women, as is imposter syndrome. The feeling that you're not good enough to be where you are. You might have it in your jobs. It is common, guys. The difference between people that succumb to self-sabotage or imposter syndrome, and the students do succumb to this sometimes, is the ones that talk about it, and the ones that kind of come up to an instructor and say, "I feel this is above me. I feel I'm struggling." And then we can go, "Good, now we can work with that, can't we?" The ones that don't come and say that are the ones that crumble, and you can see them crumbling. And I know what it is, because I wrote essays on it, and I did lots of research on psychology and everything else, and we talk about it a lot as instructors. So then we can address it. It tends to be towards, I always found, the BFM phase at Valley was hard on A flight, which is now 25 Squadron. A lot of the instructors would struggle to get through that. And the ACM, Advanced Radar, as well, is a difficult phase for some students. So those are new skills, they're dynamic. So in short, the successful student is the humble one who helps other people outside of with their own time, and will ask questions of the instructor, and will really start to think about the psychology of flying. The unsuccessful student is the one that doesn't give their time to anyone else, goes home every evening to play video games. They're probably struggling anyway. They probably don't want to be there, actually, to be honest. It's a hard job. They're probably worried about going to the front line, and this is why we have to be careful how we stream people. One of the things we can do, though, is we can restream people if they are failing onto another aircraft type, and we can say, "Look, you're not doing very well here, but we have a Maltese engine course starting very soon. You don't think you're going to get through? Why don't we sidetrack you onto that?" And they do so well, by the way, and they're so much more comfortable if they pulled out the fast jet flying pipeline and put onto something, because they've already done half the course. You know what I mean?
So that leads into my second question, because unlike DCS, obviously in real life, safety's first, got to be paramount. You want to bring the jet and your people back in one piece. So what's the quickest you've actually gone into a cockpit with a student and thought, "I'm not even taking this plane up with this person"? Or do you know before that stage?
Yeah, that happens. So it normally happens in the brief, to be honest. It normally happens in the brief, where you're in a brief, the student won't know the answers to the questions you're asking, and they're not super. The French are super challenging. The French are all over this, gone. They are ruthless. The British is more of a discussion, like, what are we going to do if this happens? What are the rules of combat? What's the weather limits for the thing today? And if the student, and we ask instructors as well, by the way, it's all fair. What's the bold-faced Tim for an engine failure? And sometimes, a guy might be like, "Oh, hang on a second, it's there somewhere. Give me a second," and then we'll help them out, and it's all good. It's all good because we're a team, right? Even with the students, we're a team. Because you're right about the flight safety. Any one of those students can kill me, and I can kill any one of those students, and I don't want to do that. So, so in the brief, sometimes we'll realise a lack of cognitive ability or a cognitive overload is happening again and again and again. In the air, I think what happens sometimes is the domestic flying, which is the departure and the recovery, can be weak for a student because they concentrate so much on what's called air exercise. I kind of see this on servers sometimes, where people get out in a gaggle of, well, I don't want to swear, but a gaggle of jets. And then they sort of end up in roughly the same place, and then they end up on the same heading, and then they come back kind of individually, getting each other's way. You can't do that in military flying, obviously. You have to be very, very squared away. And that's probably because of a lack of air traffic. You guys don't seem,
no, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah. So I understand why. So, but I mean, I think I understand why. So I think in that case, normally what happens is the student comes on the jets, maybe as a training risk, We just keep an eye on the student with the training risk. We don't tell them. We don't specially do anything for them. We just keep an eye on them because you don't want to put the pressure on. And then they either do one or two things. They either do the work, they watch all the flight tapes. There was a period of time on 4 where a lot of the instructors wanted to not let the students watch the instructors' flight tapes. Luckily, I was the senior instructor, and I said no. I said they will watch our tapes, and we will make mistakes, and they will learn from our mistakes. Be embarrassed. Okay, and if you want to do anything good with your life, guys, you've got to understand that you will be ridiculed. I get ridiculed all the time on YouTube. I know you guys probably do when you fly.
Yeah.
So what, right? So what, you're the one that's growing, or whatever. It's like let the little people do the little stuff. So the student that starts watching the flight tapes comes back to an instructor and says, "I was watching your flight tape and you did this." The instructor will say, "Yeah, I made a mistake. Actually, yeah, you'll make a mistake every single trip. Everyone does. There's no perfect trip. I used to make a mistake all the time. If it was a serious mistake, I stand up in Met Brief in the morning and go, by the way, me as the most senior instructor here has made a mistake yesterday. I want to play this tape." Now, when you do that and you have a very open and transparent learning environment, people invest in it. They get really involved. And then they come to you and they say, as students, I've made a mistake in this trip. And I say, right, flight safety, that safety's a big column. What do you do? I didn't check my fuel and I got to this waypoint. Fine, let's put it in red. Safety, fuel, excellent. I don't hammer the guy for it because I've done it myself, but it's a really good learning point. So yeah, the guy that's really not doing that investigation, that's self-work, is the person that we will see not progressing at the rate at which they should progress in line with their peers. And that's the person that will then take what's called flexible element. So FE, which is extra training hours, of which they can have about 10% of the course before we need to let them go.
Excellent. Yeah, that answers the question in great detail, Tim, which is what we've come to expect from you. I've got loads of more questions. I'm sure all the guys have as well. So I'm going to try and deliberate some time for them. So thanks for showing us how we service guys can make some sense of the civvy chaos, because it really is out here, isn't it? And for putting young people into constructive avenues, really, that inspire them and let them work towards something that they're really going to get to grips with and work towards the goals. So thanks, Tim. It's been quite inspiring. Cheers for that. And I'll hand over to somebody else.
Cheers. Right, we are out of time, guys. But anyone got anything that's very quick that we can do urgently? Good. Right, brilliant.
You're
right.
a relief then.
Well, I don't want to keep you, and I'm 10 minutes late for my lesson.
I've got to go.
Tim, thank you very much. On a series, obviously it was awesome, and I learned a lot, and blah blah blah. It was really cool. But you kind of, I don't know what the word is, but I find you very inspirational, and I think I can learn a lot from you, and my guys can. So obviously, we'll keep reaching out to you constantly, and we might bag you at some point for something. Sure. Just remember we're here. I know you're very busy, but just remember we're here, and we all want to learn as well. So we want a piece of you as well. Any final things? Any final kind of last, I don't know, gem of philosophy you want to put out there?
Well, not really. I mean, I jump on your server. You'll see me floating around your server, and really what I'm trying to do is just work the jet out with guys that I can just ask the question to. Like, guys, I'm struggling with the data link on the F-18, and I could just go on YouTube and watch a video, but I'm on a server. I'm on the Grim Reapers server, and I'm on the chat. And what's great is someone would just go, "Oh, mate, this key, hit that," and go there. And I think that's what's great on your public servers and stuff. Just to have that, I really benefit from that. So I'm learning more from you guys right now than you're learning from me. At a time when I can pay that back, let me know, and I'll come and drag you around some routes, whatever, and we'll just talk about some domestic elements, and it'll be pretty cool. Okay?
Sounds good. Okay, can you send any links that you want linked on this, your businesses and stuff like that, so I can link them?
Yeah.
Otherwise, sure. Great. I'm sure we'll cross again in the future, and I've got to go, but I'll see you later otherwise.
Thanks so much.
Cheers, Tim.
I'll talk soon, guys. Okay?
Bye.